Prologue. Distinctions. The Ogier of Stedding Shangtai observed with increasing alarm the weakening of the fundamental cosmic fabric, the pattern. The sky grew dark, and chillingly, the spirits of their dead appeared outside the Stedding's borders, gazing inward. Most distressingly, the sacred trees fell ill, immune to the healing power of Ogier's song. In this time of profound sorrow, Loyal, son of Arent, son of Halen, resolved to address the great stump. Despite initial resistance and his mother Coverill's previous opposition, she unexpectedly championed his cause. As the final speaker, Loyal felt a serene purpose, understanding the council's inclination to open the book of translation, which would leave humanity alone against the shadow. He knew his words were critical. Lan Mandragoran rode his horse, Mandab, through the desolate, salt-crusted Proska Flats in northern Saldea, heading towards a foretold death. The grim, blight-marred landscape mirrored his resolve. He reflected on his wife, Nynaeve, noting her growing eyes, Sedai-like shrewdness, and acknowledging that her fear for his safety pained him more than his own fate. Lan's solitary journey was interrupted by Bulan, a former messenger boy from Kandor. Bulan, having heard from Nynaeve that the Golden Crane was raised, brought vital supplies and sought to join Lan. Lan, remembering his oath to Nynaeve, initially tried to dismiss Bulan, arguing he hadn't formally raised the Golden Crane, and Bulan was unmounted. However, Bulan, revealing his Malkieri heritage, produced his father's Hadori and passionately pleaded for the right to fight the Shadow alongside Lan, lacking anyone to grant this traditional honor. Lan, compelled by his own unshakable sense of honor, ultimately accepted Bulan, stipulating anonymity and no public rallying of the Golden Crane. Thus, Lan's solitary ride gained a loyal companion. Perrin Ibarra found himself in a disorienting dream, seemingly blending with the wolf dream, working an anvil in Master Luhan's forge, with Hopper, a grizzled wolf, observing him. He struggled to shape iron, producing misshapen lumps, his mind plagued by camp rumors and the heavy burden of his leadership. Hopper, communicating in wolf-like images and scents, urged him towards the freedom of a wolf's life, unburdened by human worries. Perrin fiercely resisted, fearing he would lose his humanity and his connection to Fail. He retrieved steel figurines from a boiling quenching barrel. The first was a twisted, screaming figure of Aram, sparking painful memories of his death. The dream then transformed into the chaotic battle for Maiden. Perrin, wielding an axe instead of his hammer, brutally dispatched Shido Aiel. When Aram appeared, murderous, a shadowy dream version of Perrin, which then morphed into a dark wolf, tore out Aram's throat. Perrin protested this dream's distortion of events, though he acknowledged Aram would have killed him. More glowing figurines of fallen companions materialized, seemingly accusing him, and Aram's shattered form began to reform into grasping hands. Perrin awoke, shaken, his heart pounding, a direct consequence of both the disturbing dream and a recent bubble of evil attack in his waking life. His wife, Fele, slept peacefully beside him, but sleep remained elusive for Perrin. High in her opulent fortress of Natrin's Barrow, Graendal, one of the Forsaken, conversed with an impatient Arangar, subtly wielding the seductive and dangerous true power to assert her dominance and subtly reference Arangar's past failure with Egwene. An alarm soon signaled an intrusion, the capture of Pikor Ramshalan, a Domani lord. Graendal used compulsion to extract his true, arrogant ambition to gain Rand al'Thor's trust by feigning an alliance with a local merchant family, Graendal herself, intending to leverage this to secure his own kingship. Graendal realized Rand had located her and was attempting a cunning manipulation. She contemplated fleeing to avoid the Great Lord's potential punishment, but hesitated, driven by a desire to inflict pain on Rand. She tasked Delana, Arangar's compelled eyes Sedai, with crafting an intricate compulsion for Ramshalan, erasing his memories of Graendal and replacing them with a false, convoluted narrative of a successful merchant alliance, including strange, arbitrary requirements designed to mislead Rand and potentially Nynaeve, whom Grendel suspected could read compulsions. Arangar, seeking to regain favor, added another complex layer to the compulsion. Grendel then used the true power to perceive through a dove's eyes, following Ramsharlan after his release. She observed him meeting Rand and Nynaeve at a distant gateway, where Rand wielded a powerful access key. Grendel instantly understood Rand's true objective. Ramsharlan was a deliberate decoy, intended to confirm her location and feed misleading compulsions for Nynaeve to discover. Terrified by this clever strategy and the immediate danger, Grendel swiftly shielded and bound both Arangar and Delana. She leapt through a hastily opened gateway, narrowly escaping as Rand balefired Natrin's barrow, instantly erasing the entire palace and all its occupants, including Arangar, from the pattern. Grendel, injured but alive and presumed dead, now faced the Great Lord's wrath for another Forsaken's demise. She began to carefully plan her next moves against a surprisingly astute Rand. Galad Damodred, Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Light, led his 7,000 weary men through a treacherous, foul-smelling swamp on the border of Gialdan and Altara. The oppressive environment mirrored the demoralization of his soldiers, unnerved by the world's deepening decay and the shocking revelations of their former leader, Valda's depravity. Despite Dain Bornhald's pleas to turn back from the seemingly endless swamp, Galad, recognizing the urgency of the last battle and the futility of lesser conflicts, insisted they press forward. He maintained his grim resolve to lead his forces towards the ultimate confrontation with the Shadow, even as their maps proved inaccurate in this changing world. Galad Damodred led his 7,000 weary Children of the Light through a treacherous, map-defying swamp where shifting terrain mirrored the darkening world. Bornhald conveyed the men's exhaustion, but Galad, recalling Morgus's leadership lessons, delivered an inspiring speech. He declared them beacons in these darkest days, turning their afflictions into strength, revitalizing their resolve for the last battle. Child Jarrett Byer, zealous but wary of eyes, said I still desired a fight without alliance, a notion Galad dismissed as impractical against the Shadow's power. Galad privately acknowledged Asunawa's corruption and the Shon-Chan's backing, seeking to evade the High Inquisitor to serve the greater purpose of the last battle. The journey continued as scouts, including Barlet, reported a dead, ash-grey forest and an unmapped, corpse-strewn river. Galad led his men across the cold, murky water, noting numerous bloated bodies, evidence of upstream attacks. His old wounds ached from the strenuous trek. Trom, a trusted Lord Captain, discussed supply woes and political hostility, but praised Galad's leadership, which Galad felt was his moral duty after Valda's death. Galad affirmed their commitment to the last battle, even with the Dragon Reborn, despite his personal distrust. As Scout Barlet announced they were clear of the swamp, a vast, fresh army appeared, thousands of pristine children, including questioners and Shon-Chan allied Amadisian foot soldiers, led by High Inquisitor Asunawa. Galad immediately understood Barlet was a traitor and the swamp march a calculated delay for this ambush. To prevent internecine war, Galad, with Bornhald and Byer, rode to parley. Asunawa demanded surrender, threatening archers, and falsely branded Galad's men dark friends. Galad skillfully used the children's tenets, never to surrender, to highlight his impossible choice. Asunawa dismissed Galad's authority, claiming shadow powers were used against Valda. Galad subtly countered, questioning if light would permit a dark friend to win an honorable duel, sowing doubt among other lords captain. To save his men, Galad offered his personal surrender on the strict condition that all his followers be spared questioning or punishment. Despite Bornhald's protests, Galad declared his life a necessary sacrifice for unity against the Dark One. Asunawa reluctantly agreed, though Galad himself would face questioning. Galad handed his heron-marked sword to Bornhald, ordering him to prevent any rescue. Questioners brutally seized Galad, stripped him, and beat him unconscious while he defiantly maintained his loyalty to the light. Meanwhile, the being once known as Padan Fain, now consumed by hatred and madness, traversed the blight. His blood-stained dagger was constant. A creeping mist, his power's manifestation, trailed him. Encountering a Myrddraal and Trollocs, Fain's mist lashed out, grotesquely killing them, boiling their flesh. He savoured this, then reanimated the corrupted Trollocs into a frenzied army, noting his touch, instantly killed Myrddraal. His hunt for Althor was now a predetermined, vengeful meeting. In Kandor, Commander Malenarin Rai of Heath Tower oversaw his blight-watching post, preparing for his son, Keemlin's 14th name day, a coming-of-age ceremony. The tower's defences included traps and a mirror signalling system. Sergeant Jargon reported an ominous, uncorrected flash from Rena Tower deep in the blight. With no replies from Rena or Farme, Malenarin suspected they had fallen, ordering urgent messages south. Malenarin discovered Keemlin, next on the messenger roster, had selflessly yielded his place to Tian, a lighter boy whose mother had lost other sons to the blight, ensuring Tian's greater chance of escape. Recognizing his son's profound maturity, Malenarin, filled with pride, immediately performed the sword ceremony, declaring Keemlin a man ready for crisis. As men cheered, a colossal horde of Trollocs and Drashkar surged from the north, confirming Malenarin's fears. Despite overwhelming odds, Malenarin, Keemlin, and the Kandori soldiers of Heath Tower stood resolute, prepared to fight to their last breath, fulfilling their duty against the shadow. Chapter 1: Apples First. The chapter begins with a sweeping panoramic view of a world gripped by chaos and decay, conveyed through the journey of a wind across continents. This wind acts as a witness to the grim state of affairs, passing over the smouldering remnants of Shonchan, a land scarred by war, and then across a second continent holding its breath in fearful anticipation. The atmosphere is apocalyptic, with prophecies fulfilled, a murderer on a throne, and a pervasive sense of finality. The narrative then narrows its focus dramatically, settling on a specific apple orchard at the foot of the mountain Dragon Mount. Here we meet Almen Bunt, an elderly farmer burdened by worries for his family and his community, who is visiting his late brother-in-law's orchard. He and his young nephews Han and Adim awaken to a catastrophe. A seemingly supernatural blight has destroyed their entire crop overnight, with every apple shriveling and falling from the trees. This event pushes Almen, and by extension the entire starving village, to the brink of utter despair. Just as Almen succumbs to his hopelessness, a miraculous event unfolds. A mysterious, one-armed stranger with red hair appears, and with his mere presence, the blighted land is renewed. The rotted fruit vanishes, the trees impossibly blossom a second time, and then immediately bear a supernaturally abundant and perfect harvest of ripe, red apples. Almen slowly recognizes the stranger as the dragon reborn, who cryptically advises him to gather the fruit quickly, as his presence offers a temporary shield from a malevolent touch upon the world. The chapter concludes with the stranger departing on an urgent errand, leaving a revitalized Almen filled with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. He rushes off to rally the villagers, transforming a day of certain ruin into a day of miraculous salvation. Chapter 2: Questions of Leadership. This chapter opens under a perpetually dark and menacing sky, where thunder rumbles without the release of rain, mirroring the oppressive atmosphere weighing on Perin Aibara's enormous column of soldiers and refugees. Their progress is agonizingly slow, bogged down by a thick, clinging mud that has stretched a week's intended journey into more than a month. Perin's internal state is as troubled as the weather. He is consumed with worry for Master Gil's missing supply party and frustrated by the constant delays, his thoughts often turning to a complex blacksmith's puzzle he cannot solve, a clear metaphor for his own tangled situation. His burdens of leadership are immediately highlighted when he accepts a desperate band of sellswords led by a man named Tern, offering them food in exchange for their service, a decision born of compassion that also reveals the grim state of the wider world. This act is instantly challenged by Arganda, the first captain of Gyaldan, showcasing the persistent friction between the different military factions under Perrin's command, which he must constantly manage. His logistical nightmare worsens when he learns from a lone scout that Master Gil's party, his lifeline of supplies, has disobeyed his orders and diverted toward Lugard, deeming the northern roads impassable. The central conflict of Perrin's narrative unfolds in a tense conversation with his wife, Faile. She argues that the thousands of followers flocking to his banner are not a coincidence, but a manifestation of his nature as a Tavaren, a focal point of the pattern. She views his recent accomplishments, like the alliance with the Shonchan and the capture of Maiden, as undeniable proof of his leadership capabilities. Perrin, however, vehemently rejects this identity. He sees only his failures, the internal strife that plagued the camp in her absence, his inability to prevent Aram's corruption by the prophet Masema, and the shame he perceives from his own Two Rivers men. He insists that he is simply a blacksmith, not a lord, and longs to be free of the command he never wanted. Meanwhile, a starkly contrasting story of leadership unfolds elsewhere. Galad Damodred awakens in darkness, naked, beaten, and chained, a prisoner of the children of the Light's questioners. Despite his physical agony and impending torture, his resolve is absolute. Believing he made the right choice to save his men, he prepares to face his fate with unwavering dignity, methodically cleaning the blood from his face in a quiet act of defiance. But when the tent flaps open, he is met not by his torturers, but by his own loyal men, accompanied by the very Lord's captain who had previously supported his enemy, Asunawa. They present him with Asunawa's severed head, explaining that they could not stomach the High Inquisitor's corruption, his lies, and his attempt to pit brother against brother. In a moment of dramatic reversal, they swear their allegiance to Galad, naming him the new Lord Captain Commander. Though he feels unprepared for the role, Galad accepts the responsibility without hesitation, immediately issuing clear and decisive orders to consolidate his forces and march for Andor, embracing the mantle of leadership, just as Perrin desperately seeks to cast it aside. Chapter 3. The Fury of the Amirlin. The chapter opens within the abstract void between waking and sleep, where Egwene exists as a formless consciousness. This realm, a darkness filled with the countless dreamlights of humanity, serves as her sanctuary for contemplation. Here she is reminded of the vast world beyond the White Tower that she is sworn to serve. While she feels the pull of Gawain's dreams, she resists, recognizing that her conflicted feelings for him require clarity, not fantasy. Instead, she focuses on her duties, projecting a forceful message into Nynaeve's dream. She issues an ultimatum, demanding a meeting and threatening consequences for further avoidance, underscoring the urgency of unifying their efforts and formally bringing both Nynaeve and Elaine into the fold as full Aes Sedai. Her night is then shattered by a series of 3 deeply disturbing prophetic visions. The first shows 13 black towers representing the Black Ager, with several collapsing as the remaining ones grow ominously taller, signifying a dangerous consolidation of shadow within the world. The second vision is of a serpent, a clear symbol of one of the Forsaken, hidden within a nest of eagles, devouring them one by one. Egwene interprets this to mean Messana is still masquerading as an Aes Sedai within the tower, a terrifying confirmation of her darkest suspicions. The final vision is the most catastrophic. She sees Rand al'Thor purposefully chopping the ropes that hold together a fractured crystal sphere, causing it to shatter. The meaning is unambiguous and horrifying. Rand intends to break the remaining seals on the Dark One's prison. Awakened by these visions, Egwene is barely able to compose herself before her keeper, Sylviana, arrives with astonishing news. The Dragon Reborn is physically present at the White Tower, asking for an audience. The narrative then shifts to the perspective of Siwan Sanche, who reacts to the news with a mixture of disbelief and strategic frustration. As she, Serin, and the tower guard captain hurry toward the hall, she learns how Rand simply walked through the gates amidst the chaos of refugee intake. Siwan's internal state is explored in depth. She grapples with the painful memory of her own time as a Milin and the feeling of being sidelined, yet she also feels a genuine, hard-won pride in Egwene's leadership. This complex emotion is soothed by Gareth Bryne, whose steady presence allows her to admit that Egwene is the leader the tower needs now. When Siwan finally lays eyes on Rand, she is struck by his profound transformation. The boy she knew is gone, replaced by a man of immense presence and unnerving calm. He carries himself with an authority that, in a moment of chilling insight, she describes as being like an Aes Sedai. His power as a Ta'veren is palpable, and in a brief, disarming exchange, he acknowledges Siwan personally, displaying none of the arrogance or instability she had been led to expect. The confrontation culminates in the hall of the tower, where Egwene attempts to project the full authority of the Amirlin seat, struggling to view the man before her as the dangerous dragon reborn rather than her childhood friend. Rand, however, completely upends her expectations. He speaks with a calm, formal intelligence, confessing his past fear of Aes Sedai manipulation before delivering his world-altering declaration. In 1 month, he will go to Shaiol Ghul and break the final seals. He does not ask for permission. He informs her of his plan and requests the tower's support, offering to meet and discuss his terms. The tension in the room becomes a tangible force, as his Ta'veren nature paralyzes the other sitters with fear, an effect Egwene seems immune to due to her personal connection to him. Realizing she cannot physically compel or contain him, and sensing an incredible power he holds in reserve, she grants him leave to depart. The chapter ends with Egwene understanding the true stakes of this new conflict. She cannot stop Rand by force, so she must do it through alliance and persuasion, making her need to connect with Elaine and Nynaeve more critical than ever before. Chapter 4, The Pattern Groans. The chapter opens with Perrin Aberer and an advance party investigating a deeply unsettling phenomenon beside the Johanna Road. The air is thick with the putrid smell of decay, yet there are no visible corpses. They are looking upon a plain where the grass is stained with dark, spreading spots, a corruption that Aes Sedai like Seonid, and the Wise One Neverin immediately identify as being identical in appearance to the Great Blight. The disturbing irony is that these blighted plants seem to be thriving, a fact that deeply troubles Perrin. He contemplates what it means for the world when a blight-like growth is considered the healthier alternative to the dying lands they have traveled through. At the heart of this corruption, they discover a small, deserted village of utterly alien construction, built from massive reeds and roofed with enormous leaves. The Aes Sedai Masuri confirms it is not native to Gealdan, leading Berelain to connect this impossible event to other recent omens, the dead walking, food spoiling instantly, and to declare that the pattern itself is groaning under a terrible strain. Taking decisive command, Perrin orders the channelers to use the one power to obliterate the village and scour the land, hoping to contain the spread. In a sign of his growing authority and the gravity of the situation, both the Aes Sedai and Wise Ones agree without argument. The narrative then shifts to Perrin's consciousness as he enters the wolf dream, Teleran Rayod. Here, the wolf spirit Hopper and a pack of others call to him, urging him to join their hunt. Perrin resists, vocalizing his profound fear of losing his humanity and becoming a mindless beast like the man named Noam he once saw. He is caught in a desperate internal struggle, believing he must either completely control the wolf inside him or banish it forever. Hopper acts as a reluctant mentor, challenging Perrin's human anxieties and trying to teach him in the way of a wolf, through action, not words. Before the lesson truly begins, Perrin is assaulted by a series of terrifying, fragmented visions. He sees Matt Cawthon surrounded by copies of himself, unaware of an assassin at his back. He sees a flock of sheep being herded by strange wolves toward a hidden menace, and he sees his wife fail and his closest followers walking toward a precipice. Forced to push these visions aside, Perrin is goaded into a chase with Hopper, learning to manipulate the dreamscape to run with impossible speed and power. He gives in to the exhilarating feeling of the hunt, allowing his body to transform into that of a wolf and taking the lead of the pack. They pursue a magnificent white stag, a creature of mythic proportions. As young bull, Perrin feels a sense of pure, primal belonging, and is moments from making the kill when Hopper violently intervenes, explaining that a death in this place is absolute and final. Shaken but resolute, Perrin accepts that this dangerous, immersive training is the only path to understanding and mastering his nature. The chapter's final section pivots to Galad Damodred, the new Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Light. He is attempting to reshape the organization, instilling a more disciplined and pragmatic approach while holding fast to their core tenets. He faces internal resistance from his Lord's captain, who question his decision to seek an alliance with their sworn enemies, the Aes Sedai of Tar Valon. Galad calmly argues that their diminished numbers and the coming of the last battle make such alliances a necessity for survival and for fulfilling their duty. Their strategic debate is interrupted when Childbire brings in a large caravan of captured travelers. Galad quickly discerns that their leader, Basil Gill, is lying about being a merchant and that his followers are the support train for a large army. After interrogating the captives, his officers report back with alarming news. The army is commanded by a man known as Perrin Goldeneyes. The chapter concludes on a tense, personal cliffhanger, as Dine Bornhold declares that this is the man who murdered his father. Chapter 5. Writings. The chapter opens with Gawain Trakand moving swiftly through the corridors of the White Tower, accompanied by the warder named Sleet. There is a palpable tension in the air, amplified by the recent string of murders that has gripped the tower. Sleet is depicted as a man with a raw, predatory nature, distinct from the more refined bearing of other warders. Their destination is the scene of the fourth killing, a small reading room where they are initially blocked by guards under the command of Captain Chubane. Gawain's internal thoughts reveal his deep-seated doubts about the official explanation for the deaths. While the Amirlin, Egwene, has attributed the killings to the Black Ager using gateways, Gawain finds the evidence contradictory. He questions why an assassin with access to the One Power would resort to using a knife, why no one ever senses channeling, and why the victims, all of whom lacked warders, were not simply killed in their sleep. Inside the room, Gawain begins his own investigation, separate from that of the Aes Sedai. He is searching for clues that fit a soldier's perspective, not a channeler's. Sleet, meticulous and observant, discovers a crucial detail. The lock on the door appears to have been forced open quietly, suggesting a non-magical entry. This reinforces Gawain's theory that the killer might be a mundane assassin, like a grey man rather than a Black Ager sister. The idea gains more weight when Sleet finds fibers of black silk, a colour an ordinary assassin might wear for stealth, but which would be ironically conspicuous for a member of the Black Ager. A significant portion of the chapter is dedicated to Gawain's evolving political and personal maturity. He correctly deduces that Captain Chubane's hostility stems from professional insecurity. Chubane fears Gawain is trying to usurp his position as head of the Tower Guard. In a moment of impressive cunning, Gawain diffuses the tension by pretending his investigation is merely a self-serving attempt to get back into Egwene's good graces and finally be bonded as her warder. He shares his theories about a non-channeling assassin with Chubane, subtly empowering the captain to take the lead on that line of inquiry, and thus making an ally out of a rival. Following this, Gawain confronts Egwene in the Amirlin study. Their interaction is fraught with the conflict between their past intimacy and their current, strained relationship. He passionately argues that in preparation for the last battle, it is an act of selfishness for any sister to remain without a warder, insisting that the hall should make bonding mandatory for the protection of the tower's greatest assets. Egwene surprisingly agrees that his point has merit. Pressing his case, Gawain presents the inconsistencies at the crime scene, which leads Egwene to make a stunning confession. She reveals the secret she has been withholding from the tower. The killer is not the Black Ager, but one of the Forsaken Missana, who is hiding among them as an Aes Sedai. This revelation recontextualizes everything. However, Egwene then forbids Gawain from guarding her door at night, explaining that she is using herself as bait in a carefully prepared trap to catch Messana, an idea that Gawain finds reckless and horrifying. The perspective then briefly shifts to Egwene after Gawain departs. Her internal monologue reveals her deep and conflicted feelings for him. She acknowledges the wisdom in his argument about warders, but she also admits to herself that his presence outside her door is a powerful temptation she is struggling to resist, seeing his untamed passion as a threat to her own rigid self-control as a Merlin. The final section of the chapter makes a dramatic pivot to the perspective of the Forsaken Grendel. She is hiding in a Spartan, remote cavern, a location chosen specifically because it contradicts her known preference for luxury. She is summoned by Moridin, the Nabliss, who confronts her over the death of another Forsaken, Arangar, at the hands of Rand al'Thor. In a masterful display of deception, Grendel reframes her apparent failure as a calculated success. She claims she deliberately lured Rand into a trap, not to kill him, but to shatter his spirit by forcing him to destroy a fortress filled with innocent people, a psychological blow from which she argues he will not easily recover. Moridin accepts her explanation but forbids her from engaging with al'Thor further. Needing a new objective to secure her position, Grendel volunteers to hunt down and kill Perrin Aybara. To aid her in this task, Moridin provides her with a dream spike, an incredibly powerful artifact capable of trapping someone in the world of dreams. He concludes by showing her a passage from a secret book of prophecy, one unknown to almost anyone else, which foretells that Perrin Aybara is destined to die at the hands of the Shadow. He promises Grendel immense rewards for success and utter ruin for failure, leaving her both empowered and deeply unsettled. Chapter 6. The chapter opens inside a vast pavilion, the site of a crucial meeting convened by Perrin Aybara. Here, Morgase Trakand, the former sovereign of Andor, moves quietly through the assembly in her new capacity as a lady's maid. While serving tea, she takes stock of the attendees, a diverse group that includes Perrin and his wife Faile, the enigmatic Elias, Tam al'Thor, and key military and political figures like Berylin and Queen Alliandra. The discussion begins with a report from the Isle Wise Ones, who have completed their task of burning a village tainted by the Blight. The focus quickly shifts to the army's future. Perrin shocks nearly everyone present by announcing his plan to disband the force he has accumulated. He intends to send Queen Alliandra and her Ghealdanin soldiers back to their own lands, wishing to shed the mantle of leadership that weighs so heavily upon him. This declaration is met with immediate protest. Alliandra insists her oath of allegiance was sworn to Perrin personally, not to the Dragon Reborn, and Berylin cautions that every available soldier will be vital for the looming last battle. Spurred by their opposition and his own deep-seated reluctance to be a lord, Perrin makes a radical and public gesture of abdication. He commands that every single copy of his personal wolf-head banner be located and burned by nightfall, emphatically stating that he is a blacksmith, not a commander, and that he will no longer have a banner of his own. The order leaves his followers, including his wife and Tam, visibly dismayed. The conversation then turns to the immense logistical challenge of relocating the thousands of refugees traveling with them. The lone, healthy Asherman, Jur Grady, confirms he lacks the strength to maintain gateways for the required duration. A potential solution emerges when Idara, a wise one, suggests they attempt to form a linking circle. By combining the power of the Asherman with the wise ones, they might be able to create gateways large enough to solve the problem. Perrin agrees to this experiment. As the meeting concludes, Perrin summons Morgus and her devoted guardsman, Talonvor. In a blunt and ill-conceived attempt to resolve what he sees as a distraction, he commands them to marry within the hour. A spark of her former queenly authority ignites within Morgus, and she flatly refuses his order. She delivers a scathing lecture on the limits of his power, informing him that he is her employer, not her sovereign, and has no right to command matters of the heart. A hurt Talonvor departs abruptly. Just as Morgus leaves to find him, her attention is caught by Ale maidens, rushing to Perrin with urgent news. She pauses long enough to overhear their stark report. A large force of Whitecloaks is positioned on the road directly in their path. Chapter 7. Lighter Than a Feather. The chapter opens with Lan Mandragoran travelling through the turbulent borderlands between Kandor and Saldea, accompanied by his new talkative follower, Bulan. Seeking to remain anonymous under the alias Andra, Lan prioritizes stealth over comfort, rejecting Bulan's suggestion to take a more travelled and hospitable road. His solitary quest to face his destiny in the Blight is forcefully interrupted when 3 riders intercept them near an inn. Lan is stunned to find they are old acquaintances, including 2 fellow Malkieri, Andere and Nazar, who now defiantly wear the Hadori headbands of their lost nation. A tense confrontation ensues. Lan, attempting to assert his authority, commands them to turn back, but they cleverly refuse. They argue that since he denies his own kingship, he has no power to command them. They are not following a king, they claim, but simply choosing to ride the same path. They are soldiers who see a need, and they intend to follow him into the jaws of death, poignantly concluding their argument with the declaration that death is lighter than a feather compared to the weight of duty. Against his will, Lan's solitary party of 2 has grown to 5, as the ghosts of his past refuse to let him walk his final road alone. Meanwhile, a separate and far larger conflict is brewing. We see 2 opposing camps on a collision course. In the first, Perrin Ibarra grapples with the burdens of command and his own feral nature. He receives crucial intelligence from his IL scouts confirming that the large White Cloak army ahead of them not only holds his captured people, including Basil Gill, but is also commanded by the Lord Captain Commander himself. This news dredges up the traumatic memory of his first killing, a confrontation with White Cloaks that resulted in his wolf friend Hopper's death. Perrin realizes the pattern is forcing him to face this demon from his past. He resolves to seek a parley, but prepares for war to rescue his friends. In the opposing camp, the new Lord Captain Commander, Galad Damadred, is presented with a skewed version of the truth. The fanatical Chalbaya recounts Perrin's history, twisting his defense of the 2 rivers into a dark plot involving Trollocs and portraying him as a savage murderer of children of the light. Convinced by this testimony and driven by his own rigid code of justice, Galad sees the situation not as a misunderstanding, but as a divine opportunity to smite a notorious dark friend. He decides to confront Perrin, proposing a formal battle, believing it is his sacred duty. Thus, both leaders, acting out of honor and necessity, prepare to meet, setting the stage for an inevitable and tragic clash. Chapter 8. The Seven-Striped Lass. The chapter opens with Matt Cawthorne finding a moment of peace within the lively confines of a tavern called the Seven-Striped Lass. He deliberately soaks in the atmosphere, appreciating the comforting and familiar smells of ale, smoke, and a clean bar top, which he contrasts with overly sterile establishments that lack character. His outward calm is a facade, however, as he is internally tormented by a sealed letter from the eyes, Sedai, Verin. He fidgets with this letter, a physical manifestation of an oath she has trapped him in. He promised that if he were to open it, he would be bound to follow whatever instructions it contained. His brooding is interrupted by the tavern's proprietor, a fetching woman named Melly Crabe. Their interaction is a playful but tense negotiation. Melly teases Matt about the letter, correctly guessing it involves a woman and an oath. Matt, despite being a married man now and internally reflecting on his devotion to Tuon, still notices Melly's attractiveness and engages in their verbal jousting. The tension escalates significantly when Melly snatches the letter and threatens to open it for him, an act that would trigger Matt's oath just the same. Panicked, Matt plays his final card, revealing that the letter's sender was an Aes Sedai. Rather than being intimidated, Melly becomes intrigued, but the mention is enough for her to relent, striking a deal that Matt must introduce her to the Aes Sedai should he see her again. Having narrowly avoided disaster, Matt leaves the tavern and moves through the tense and overcrowded streets of Caemlyn. He is in a light disguise with facial stubble and a high-collared coat, feeling paranoid about the wanted posters that are circulating with his image. His destination is a far less reputable tavern, the Dead Man's Breath, a place for serious gamblers. Here, while winning at a game of dice, he overhears a conversation that changes everything. A man mentions a local named Jowdry being found dead with his throat ripped out and his body completely drained of blood. The specific nature of the murder sends a jolt of recognition and terror through Matt. His shock is so profound that his Tavaren nature manifests physically. The dice he throws land impossibly balanced on their corners. Simultaneously, the familiar rattling of dice begins inside his head, a sure sign that his fate is undergoing a dramatic and dangerous shift. Just as this happens, he spots one of the tavern's toughs looking at one of his wanted posters. Matt immediately flees, his worst fear confirmed. The monstrous and seemingly unkillable creature, the Golem, is in Caemlyn. He quickly finds the gleeman Tom Merrilin, who is holding an entire inn captive with a masterful and haunting flute performance. After a brief, characteristic exchange where Tom playfully pins Matt's coat sleeve to the stage with a thrown knife, Matt conveys the grave news of the Golem's presence. They discuss the immediate danger and their frustrating situation, trapped in the city by Matt's refusal to open Verin's potentially life-altering letter. On their walk back to the band's encampment outside the city walls, they strategize. They discuss the Tower of Genjay, confirming its location, but lamenting their lack of an Aes Sedai who can create a gateway for them to travel there. Upon reaching the camp, Matt is informed by a guard that the 3 Aes Sedai traveling with them have returned, a piece of news that adds another layer of complication to his evening. Before he can retire, he is intercepted by Teslin Baradon, one of the Aes Sedai. In a moment that defies Matt's expectations, Teslin offers him her sincere and humble thanks for rescuing her from the Shon Chan. She acknowledges her debt to him, assuring him he now has allies within the White Tower. Genuinely moved by her sincerity, Matt reverses an earlier decision and offers her and the others horses and supplies for their journey. Finally, free. He steps into his tent, only to be brought to a dead stop by the overpowering and unmistakable scent of fresh blood. Chapter 9, Blood in the Air. The chapter opens with Matt Cawthon surviving an assassination attempt in his tent through sheer instinct. In the total darkness, he identifies the attacker as the Golem and manages to escape by cutting through the tent wall with his Ashandarei. Outside, he confronts the creature, having hastily wrapped his fox head medallion around his weapon, knowing it is the only thing that can harm the beast. The Golem reveals it is under the command of a new master who desires Matt's death above all else. It engages in psychological warfare, taunting Matt by revealing its knowledge of those he cares for, including Tom, Noel, and most shockingly, Tuon. Enraged, Matt attacks but is hopelessly outmatched by the creature's supernatural speed. He lands a glancing blow with the medallion, which burns the Golem's flesh, but the creature remains a lethal threat. Just as Matt is about to be overwhelmed, the Aes Sedai Teslin intervenes. Unable to affect the Golem directly with the one power, she cleverly uses weaves of air to hurl furniture at it, creating a crucial distraction. As the camp awakens and soldiers arrive, the Golem retreats, but not before effortlessly murdering 2 Reed Arms who attempt to stop it. A horrified Matt returns to his tent to find his servant Lopin and 2 guards slaughtered. He panics, searching for Olva, but soon learns the boy is safe with Noel, having fallen asleep there by chance, a twist of fate that saved his life. In a subsequent meeting with Tom and Noel, Matt deduces the golem gained its information by interrogating a captured soldier. He resolves that they must hunt and kill the creature, devising a new strategy to move into the city and change inns nightly to draw the golem away from the army. The chapter concludes with a tense interaction with the Eyes, Sedai Jolene, whom Matt agrees to give horses just to be rid of her. Chapter 10. The chapter opens with Perrin Ibarra in a state of restless contemplation, walking the perimeter of his new, strategically chosen camp. He is outwardly inspecting his guards, but is inwardly tormented by the decision to send his allies, including Basil Gill, ahead of his main force. This choice has led directly to their capture by the Children of the Light, failure that weighs heavily on him. His advisor, Elias, attempts to absolve him of this guilt, pointing out that the circumstances were unforeseeable and any other option would have also been fraught with danger. The oppressive atmosphere is mirrored by the landscape itself, where the scent of rot and decay feels like a precursor to the true corruption of the Blight. The central conflict quickly becomes how to deal with the Whitecloaks and rescue their people. The discussion reveals a clash of philosophies. Grady, the Asherman, advocates for a direct and overwhelming assault using the One Power, a simple solution that Perrin finds abhorrent due to the traumatic memories of destruction from past battles. Perrin, ever the reluctant leader, hopes for a diplomatic solution, theorizing that the Whitecloaks may not know who they are and could be persuaded to release their captives through negotiation and intimidation. A significant turning point occurs within the Ale section of the camp. There, the Ashaman Niald, working with the Wise Ones, successfully creates a stable, large gateway by linking with female channelers. This technological breakthrough is immediately followed by a profound personal revelation. Grady, buoyed by this success, requests leave to visit his family at the Black Tower. He explains the reason for his sudden urgency. The corrupting taint on saidin, the male half of the One Power, is gone. This news fundamentally alters the fate of all male channelers. It transforms the Ashaman from men fighting for a worthy death before madness consumed them into men who now have a reason to live. It is a moment of deep emotional significance, giving Perrin a new understanding of the grim resolve these men have carried. The tension escalates when a messenger from the Whitecloaks arrives, Dane Bornhold, a man with a bitter personal history with Perrin. He delivers a summons for a parley with the new Lord Captain Commander. Despite the obvious risk of a trap, Perrin agrees to go, feeling he must exhaust every peaceful option. He assembles a small, powerful group for protection, including a disguised Grady ready to open a gateway for a quick escape. The meeting is with Galad Damodred, the new composed leader of the Children. The parley is brief and absolute. Galad is not interested in negotiation. He issues an ultimatum. Perrin must face the Whitecloak army on the field of battle. If he does, the captives will be freed, regardless of the outcome. If he refuses, they will be harmed. Perrin, though tempted to use Grady's power to end the standoff, honors the truce and withdraws. The chapter concludes from Galad's perspective, revealing that the meeting has only hardened his resolve. He interprets Perrin's golden eyes and defensive demeanor as confirmation of his evil nature, making the coming battle a righteous necessity in his mind. Chapter 11. An Unforeseen Correspondence. The chapter begins with Queen Elaine in a state of profound agitation, having just received a political proposal from her primary rival, the Lady Elorian. She angrily dismisses the document, which demands the release of nobles who had been captured after unsuccessfully challenging her for the throne. Her frustration is amplified by the contrast between her own physical discomfort due to her pregnancy and the impeccable composure of her advisor, Delin. A tense, strategic discussion follows, centering on the fate of these captive lords. Elaine views them as a political asset, while Delin wisely cautions that their value is rapidly diminishing as Elaine's own power solidifies. The conversation highlights Elaine's developing political philosophy. She flatly rejects Birgit's pragmatic suggestion of execution, insisting on a just rule even for her enemies, declaring that there can be no treason when there was no queen. Driven to find a solution that demonstrates strength and unifies the fractious Andorran nobility, Elaine unveils a startlingly audacious plan. She intends to immediately move to claim the Sun Throne of Caerhien. Birgitte views this as utter madness, given Elaine's still tenuous hold on Andor, but Elaine argues that the timing is perfect. She sees it as a necessary power play to create a formidable political bloc before the last battle, refusing to wait years to stabilize her rule as her mother did. The strategic meeting is interrupted by the arrival of her chief clerk, Master Norrie, who brings intelligence from his newly established network of spies. He reveals that Eleda's envoy from the White Tower, Duhara Basahin, has been holding secret meetings with Elorian. Elaine and Dylin correctly deduce that this is not a genuine conspiracy but a calculated political maneuver. Duhara wanted her association with Elaine's enemies to be discovered as a thinly veiled threat from the White Tower. Following this revelation, Norrie presents a second, far more peculiar item, a crude and highly unconventional letter from a mercenary captain. Elaine is stunned to discover it is from Matrim Cawthon. The letter, written in Mat's unmistakable voice, both insulting and familiar, announces that he is camped outside Caemlyn with the Band of the Red Hand and demands an audience concerning the city's bell founders. Elaine's anger and frustration instantly evaporate, replaced by a surge of elation and amusement at the return of her old friend. She immediately recognizes a monumental opportunity, realizing that Mat's army, which contains a large number of native Caerhienin soldiers, is the perfect instrument to aid her conquest. The chapter concludes with Elaine's resolve fully hardened. She will use Mat's unexpected arrival to seize Caerhien and decides to secure the loyalty of the kin to gain the use of traveling, a necessity for ruling two separate nations. Chapter 12. An empty ink bottle. The chapter opens with Min perched on a window ledge in the Stone of Tyr, feeling an inner warmth that has nothing to do with the sun. This warmth radiates through her bond with Rand, a stark contrast to the deep anguish she felt from him just days prior. Her tranquility is shattered by a frantic Nynaeve, who is incensed by Rand's 3-day disappearance on the eve of the last battle, a situation that highlights her own sense of powerlessness. Min attempts to reassure her, insisting that Rand needed the solitude and that a profound, positive transformation is occurring within him. Their tense discussion is cut short by the arrival of Serene Nemdal, who brings alarming news. Alana Mosvani has vanished from her quarters without a trace. The perspective then shifts to Cadsuan, who investigates Alana's bare room, finding only an empty ink bottle and a hastily opened letter. The strategic danger is immense. As his warder, Alana is a living beacon, and her capture by the Shadow would mean they could track Rand anywhere. The chapter's climax arrives through an unexpected medium. Cadsuane, drinking tea, is shocked to discover it is pure and sweet, free of the Dark One's taint. At that exact moment, Min feels a definitive shift in the bond and announces that Rand is here, in the city. Chapter 13. For What Has Been Wrought. The chapter begins with Min Farshaw's frantic race through the Stone of Tyr, searching for Rand al'Thor after his mysterious 3-day absence. When she finds him, she is immediately struck by his profound transformation. He emanates an overwhelming sense of power, and his eyes possess an ancient depth that causes her to fear the man she loved has been lost. Her terror is only dispelled when he offers a familiar, vulnerable smile, confirming his essential self remains. Following their emotional embrace, Rand displays a startling, new clarity and purpose. He begins systematically setting his world to rights, first by addressing the Aiel. He acknowledges his debt of Tioe to them for his disappearance, and his sincere vow to never abandon them again mends the fractured trust. He then launches into a series of decisive commands, arranging a meeting with the borderland armies, announcing Egwene's ascension to a Merlin seat, and preparing his forces for war, all with an absolute authority that astounds his allies. This new Rand handles Nynaeve's predictable anger with amusement and confronts Cadsuane with a startling self-awareness, revoking her exile while also noting how her failed manipulations inadvertently helped him. In a pivotal demonstration of his changed nature, he publicly exposes the treason of High Lord Wehreman and Anai Yella, but chooses to banish them rather than execute them, signifying a shift from vengeance to renewal. The chapter's emotional climax arrives with the appearance of his father, Tarn al-Thor. Here, the powerful dragon reborn dissolves into a vulnerable son, weeping with shame for his past actions and finding solace in his father's unconditional forgiveness. Chapter 14. A Vow. The chapter opens with Egwene al-Verch, now the Amerlin seat, finding a moment of solitude in the world of dreams, Tel'aran'rhiod. She chooses a location of personal significance, the very first place she ever visited in this dream realm, a serene landscape of rolling green hills. This idyllic setting stands in stark contrast to the sky above, which boils with silent, violent, amethyst-streaked storm clouds. This dichotomy serves as a powerful metaphor for Egwene's own situation. Outwardly, she has achieved a form of peace by reunifying the White Tower, but inwardly and externally, she is beset by countless storms of political intrigue, impending war, and overwhelming responsibility. She reflects on her own growth, acknowledging her past naivete in treating this dangerous realm like a playground, and crediting the wise ones for the harsh lessons that ultimately saved her life and prepared her for leadership. Her first meeting is with two of those mentors, the Aiel wise ones, Amys and Bear, within the dream reflection of the heart of the Stone of Tyr. Egwene formally announces that the internal conflict in the White Tower is over and that she has been accepted as the Amerlin by all factions. The wise ones, particularly Bear, express a lingering disappointment that Egwene has chosen to lead the fools of the Tower rather than return to the Aiel. In a display of both humility and firm leadership, Egwene accepts the label of Queen of the Fools, stating her duty is to them, just as the wise one's duty was once to her. This exchange demonstrates the deep, mutual respect they share. The conversation solidifies their alliance and touches upon Egwene's long-term goal of fostering cooperation by having young Tower trainees study with the Wise Ones. The most critical part of this meeting occurs when Egwene reveals her primary concern, Rand al'Thor's insane plan to break the seals on the Dark One's prison. The Wise Ones are visibly disturbed by this news and immediately agree to confront him, giving Egwene a powerful set of allies in her opposition to Rand's course of action. Egwene then shifts her location to the Hall of the Tower to meet with her old friends Nynaeve and Elaine. Nynaeve arrives first, her demeanor prickly and resistant to Egwene's new authority. Recognizing that a direct command would only create more friction, Egwene employs a masterful psychological strategy. She asks Nynaeve for advice, framing her own struggles as a Merlin in terms that perfectly mirror Nynaeve's own past experiences as the young wisdom of Erman's Field, dealing with subjects who refuse to see her as anything more than the girl she once was. This appeal to shared experience brilliantly disarms Nynaeve, forcing her to see the parallel and acknowledge the legitimacy of the station, if not the person. The result is a monumental victory for Egwene, as Nynaeve reluctantly agrees to respect the office of the Amerlin and even addresses her as Mother, a submission that signals a crucial consolidation of Egwene's authority among those closest to her. When Elaine arrives, she is far more openly supportive. The conversation shifts back to Rand. Egwene is taken aback when both Nynaeve and Elaine show a surprisingly lukewarm response to the immense danger of breaking the seals. Egwene internally attributes their lack of alarm to the powerful, reality-bending influence of Rand's Ta'veren nature, realizing that opposing him will be even more difficult than she imagined if his very presence makes others sympathetic to his will. The discussion then turns to practical matters, including Elaine's pregnancy, which is revealed to Nynaeve, and the necessity of both women returning to the tower to formally be raised to Aes Sedai and swear the oaths. Nynaeve, in a surprising show of her newfound compliance, agrees to undergo the full, dangerous testing ritual. The meeting is violently interrupted when Egwene's warning wards are triggered. An eavesdropper is present. Egwene instantly moves to confront the threat, a Black Ager sister named Talva. The situation escalates immediately as a second, more powerful enemy appears, Alviarin, the former head of the Black Ager in the tower. In a display of pure ruthlessness, Alviarin unleashes a deadly weave of fire that incinerates her own subordinate, Talva, creating a diversion for her to escape. The brief, lethal encounter is a stark reminder that despite her victory in the tower, Egwene is still hunted. The stolen dream ter'angreal are being used by the Black Ager to infiltrate the heart of her power. The attack solidifies Egwene's resolve, and after retreating to the safer green hillside with her friends, she understands that her task is not just to lead the White Tower, but to actively hunt down and eradicate the darkness embodied by Mesahana and the Black Ager that still festers within it. Chapter 15. Use a Pebble. The chapter opens with Nynaeve moving swiftly through the city of Tyr, accompanied by the Ashaman Nef. She is deeply troubled by an unnatural storm she can feel brewing far to the north, the very place where Lan is located, and she silently prays for his safety. Her companion, Nef, is a polite but troubled man. His particular form of madness manifests as the ability to see Myrddraal, or Fades, lurking in every shadow. He believes they are scouts for the Shadow, and that they have not attacked him only because they are aware he can perceive them. Nynaeve, though weary of the madness affecting the Ashaman, feels a degree of pity for him. Their destination is the site of a recent bubble of evil, an eruption of the Dark One's power into the world. When they arrive, they find an area of the city that appears strangely faded, its colors washed out. Nynaeve discovers the horrifying nature of the event when her first step into the affected zone causes the paving stone beneath her foot to disintegrate into a fine powder. She and Nef proceed into an inn, wading through a floor that collapses into dust with every touch. Inside, they find the patrons and staff frozen in their last moments, not as corpses, but as lifeless husks. When Nynaeve touches one, it too crumbles into dust. Realizing there is no one to save, and overwhelmed with a familiar sense of helplessness, Nynaeve decides on a drastic course of action. She and Nafe combine their command of the One Power to generate a massive wind, pulverizing the entire 2-street-wide area into a swirling cloud of dust, hoping to uncover any potential survivors. They find no one. After gathering the dust into a central vortex, Nynaeve ignites it with a thread of fire, and it combusts in a violent, ashless flash. At this moment of profound frustration, Nynaeve once again mentions the Fades he sees watching them. Spurred by a desperate need to accomplish something, Nynaeve decides to attempt to heal his madness. Delving into his mind, she perceives the taint's corruption not as a simple affliction, but as a network of tiny, dark thorns embedded in his brain, a structure reminiscent of compulsion. Devising a new and complex weave on the spot, she meticulously pries each thorn loose before applying a counterweave that obliterates the madness entirely. Naf is stunned into clarity, the Fades are gone, and he is overcome with gratitude. This success marks a monumental breakthrough in the field of healing, as Nynaeve has cured a malady of the mind that was considered incurable even in the Age of Legends. Shortly after, Rand arrives. He finds Nynaeve, and they share a surprisingly mature conversation. Rand accepts blame for the bubble of evil, attributing it to his own delay in confronting the Dark One. He explains his logic for needing to break the seals on the Dark One's prison, arguing that waiting only weakens them for the inevitable final battle. To her own surprise, Nynaeve finds his reasoning sound and agrees with him. In a moment of genuine concern, Rand advises her not to let the White Tower change her, praising her passionate nature and warning her against becoming a cold, emotionless Sedai. He then asks her to be one of the 2 women who will join him in a circle to wield Kalandor at Shayol Ghul, an honor she accepts. Nynaeve then attempts to heal his madness, but when she delves him, she is shocked by what she finds. His mind is saturated with thousands of the dark thorns, but they are interwoven with a brilliant, living lattice of pure white light. The complexity is overwhelming, and she is forced to admit she cannot heal him. The chapter's perspective then shifts to Egwene at the apex of the White Tower. She has tasked 3 sisters with discovering how Messaana, the Forsaken hiding within the tower, could have subverted the Oath Rod. Scene of the White Arja presents 3 theories. The most plausible and frightening is that Messaana used a simple weave to alter the sound of her voice, allowing her to swear a false oath while everyone present heard the correct words. Egwene realizes the terrifying effectiveness of this simple trick, recognizing that the most dangerous methods are often the smallest, like a pebble, not a boulder. Egwene then receives a report on Messaana's personality. The Forsaken is described as a pragmatist and an administrator, essentially the Shadow's version of an Amerlin who is filled with rage at having been denied greater status. Egwene deduces that after a series of failures, Messaana is desperate for a major victory and will be seeking a grand gesture. She concludes that Messaana will likely try to kill her. Armed with this insight into her enemy's psychology, Egwene resolves to set a trap, using herself as the bait to draw the Forsaken out of hiding. Chapter 16, Shannahar. The chapter opens with Fael making her way through the military encampment as dusk settles. She is on her way to see the quartermaster, but her mind is preoccupied with her husband. Perrin has sent his scouts into Cairhien through a gateway, and he continues to be consumed by his dark mood regarding the White Cloaks. The 2 armies have been in a stalemate of correspondence, with Perrin attempting to arrange another formal negotiation, while the White Cloaks are insistent on resolving the matter through battle. Fael reflects on her own frustration with Perrin for having met with them secretly, and she understands his current stalling tactic is a desperate bid to find a non-violent solution for the hundreds of people held captive. As she walks, her attention is drawn to the banners of the Maena contingent, specifically Berylenn's. Fael acknowledges that the rumors surrounding Berylinn and Pera are a political problem she must address with great care, recognizing the delicate balance of her husband's authority and alliances. This thought triggers a surprising and profound moment of introspection. She finds herself wishing for her mother's counsel. This realization stops her in her tracks as she reflects on the immense change she has undergone. 2 years prior, as the rebellious Serene, she had fled her home and responsibilities in Saldea to pursue the fantasy of being a hunter for the Horn. She now understands she ran not from a dislike of her duties, but from the suffocating inevitability of the path laid out for her. The irony is not lost on her that she is now using every single lesson in statecraft and administration her mother had forced upon her. Her trained eye assesses the camp's condition, noting the need for leather for the cobblers, the problem of finding dry firewood, and the rising tension from a specific group of refugees. She moves through the bustling supply ring, a chaotic yet orderly village in itself, and arrives at the quartermaster's station. There she engages in a subtle political dance with the quartermaster, Bavin Rockshaw. Knowing he is corrupt but too valuable to simply imprison, she uses veiled comments about irregularities in supply distribution, mentioning specific camps receiving preferential treatment, to make him aware that he is being watched. She cleverly invokes Perrin's reputation for a fearsome temper as a warning, ensuring Bavin will curb his thievery out of fear. Her business concluded, she feels a sense of fulfillment, realizing that her life with Perrin has transformed the duties she once fled from into a rewarding purpose. The narrative then shifts to a secluded hilltop where Perrin awaits Fael. He is consumed by guilt and self-doubt, confessing to her that his failure is proven by the fact that he would not have surrendered himself for the captives, a stark contrast to his willingness to do so back in the Two Rivers. He interprets this change as a hardening of his soul, a descent into callousness. Fail, however, offers a different perspective, framing his decision not as a moral failing, but as the necessary pragmatism of a true leader. A lord, she explains, cannot allow himself to be manipulated by the capture of his subjects. Their conversation turns to Perrin's deep-seated desire to abandon his leadership role and return to a simple life as a blacksmith. Fail gently but firmly challenges this fantasy, pointing out that the two rivers he remembers is gone forever, and that his people, now accustomed to the idea of a lord, would be vulnerable if he were to step down. Her logic forces Perrin to confront the unsettling reality that his abdication could lead to someone far worse taking control, stirring an unexpected anxiety within him. At this point, Fail reveals the true purpose of their meeting, a private, candlelit feast. She explains it is to celebrate their first Shanahar, a Saldean tradition marking a wedding anniversary. In a gesture of compromise, she has modeled the celebration on a Two Rivers custom that Tam once described to her. Perrin is initially resistant, questioning how he can feast while his people are in danger and the last battle looms. Fail persuades him by arguing that in the face of potential oblivion, it is more important than ever to cherish the moments and people they hold dear. As they share the meal, their conversation deepens into a series of profound confessions. Perrin finally unburdens his soul of the secrets and fears that have tormented him. He tells Fail everything. The terrible things he did and was prepared to do to rescue her, his fear of the wolf within him taking control, his frenzied state in the wolf dream, his terror of becoming like the mindless man-wolf gnome, and the full story of his connection with the wolf Hopper. This act of complete vulnerability allows Fail to truly understand the immense burden he carries. In return, Fail shares her own story of captivity in Malden, detailing her strategies and plans for escape. This exchange of truths erases the emotional distance that has existed between them since her rescue. The chapter culminates in a moment of deep intimacy and understanding. Fail admits she had considered instigating an argument over his reckless rescue just to experience the reconciliation, but chose instead to honor the knight in his Two Rivers way, a gesture of profound love and adaptation. This admission touches Perrin deeply. The worries and awkwardness that have plagued their reunion are finally gone, and as they kiss, they are truly and completely reunited, their bond forged anew through shared vulnerability and acceptance. Chapter 18. The Strength of This Place. The chapter begins with Perrin Ibarra plunging into the wolf dream, a realm he now navigates with growing familiarity. Though the waking world presents him with the escalating crisis of the White Cloak Army, his mind is settled and strengthened by his reunion with Fail. This newfound internal peace gives him a sense of invincibility, a belief that with her by his side, any obstacle can be overcome. He decides to use the dream state to reconnoiter the enemy camp, considering a decisive and brutal strike using his Ashaman and Wise Ones to permanently shatter the Children of the Light. While moving through the ephemeral reflection of the White Cloak encampment, he is struck by a moment of painful self-awareness, realizing he never once thought to use this incredible ability to search for Fail during her long captivity, a failure of imagination that troubles him deeply. His training in this otherworldly place resumes under the tutelage of the wolf, Hopper. The instruction is unconventional and frustrating for Perrin, as Hopper communicates through instinct and imagery rather than human language. The core lesson revolves around a paradox. Perrin must learn to be present in the dream with enough strength to defend himself, yet not so strongly that he loses his anchor to his sleeping body and the waking world. Hopper explains that Perrin must hold on to his home, his den, to keep from being lost. While the wolf suggests Emmons Field, Perrin understands his true anchor is Fail. Through a series of mental and physical assaults, Hopper forces Perrin to practice this delicate balance, teaching him to solidify his dream self at a moment's notice while generally maintaining a lighter, less rooted presence. Their training is abruptly interrupted by the appearance of a bizarre, translucent violet wall that cuts through the dreamscape, an anomaly that deeply disturbs Hopper, who identifies it only as a profound wrongness. The narrative then shifts dramatically to the grim reality of the battlefield, focusing on the great General Rodel Iturralde. He is orchestrating a desperate defense against a relentless tide of Trollocs pouring out of the Blight. From his fortified hilltop position, Iturralde masterfully commands his exhausted troops, but they are critically outnumbered. His strategic brilliance is on full display as he anticipates the enemy's moves, but his situation is dire, made worse by the refusal of the Saldean lords in the nearby city of Maradon to offer him aid. The battle takes a cunning and horrific turn when the Shadowspawn army begins using trebuchets. Iturralde initially believes they are flinging corpses for demoralization, but his sharp tactical mind quickly discerns the truth behind the gruesome barrage. A significant portion of the falling bodies are not corpses at all, but living Drajkar using the dead as camouflage for a surprise aerial assault on his command post. The chapter depicts the ensuing chaos as Iturralde fights for his life, screaming to drown out the Drajkar's deadly song, his thoughts a desperate prayer that the Dragon Reborn will honor his promise and send reinforcements. Finally, the focus returns to Perrin's camp and to Fele, who is now resolved to deal with the poisonous rumors concerning her husband, and Berylinn, the first of Mayene. Fale approaches the confrontation not with simple anger, but with a calculated and brilliant political strategy. She understands that a direct accusation or a shouting match would only confirm the gossip. Instead, she leverages her reputation as a fiery borderlander and Berylinn's misunderstanding of her character. She calmly issues Berylinn an ultimatum based on an archaic tradition, a formal challenge to a duel to the death with knives to settle the matter of honor. This is a masterful bluff. Fale gambles that Berylinn, a consummate politician who has miscalculated by assuming Fale would not return from captivity, will believe she is unhinged enough to follow through. The threat of a deadly and reputation-destroying scandal forces Berylinn's hand. Cornered, Berylinn must use her own considerable skills of manipulation to find a genuine solution to the problem she created. The resolution is an ironic and deeply distasteful alliance. The two rivals agree to quell the rumors by feigning a close and public friendship, a performance that promises to be as challenging as any duel. Chapter 19. Discourse on Dragons. The chapter begins with Matt Cawthon preparing himself for a momentous meeting. He dons a sturdy but plain wool coat, a practical garment notable only for its brass buttons and the few arrow holes that serve as grim reminders of past battles. His internal thoughts reveal a man grappling with his changing circumstances. Having just shaved off a beard he found intolerably itchy, he wonders how his friend Perrin endures it, while simultaneously resolving to find other ways to disguise himself when necessary. This small act of grooming is a reassertion of his self-reliance, a rejection of the need for servants to perform simple tasks. His preparations conclude as he takes up his raven-marked Ashandare, a weapon that seems to hum with anticipation, and sets out from his tent, now intending to stay within Kemlin's walls. As he moves through the camp of the Band of the Red Hand, he reflects on the precarious military situation, with a sea of mercenary companies and loyalist lords' forces creating a volatile atmosphere around the city, a political powder keg that he fears Queen Elaine may not fully appreciate. His departure is briefly interrupted by the young boy Olver, who eagerly tries to discuss strategy for their future quest to rescue Moiraine. This interaction reveals that Matt has been careless, allowing word of this secret and dangerous mission to spread among his soldiers through the boy's enthusiastic chatter. Matt is forced to gently put Olver off, promising to talk later, a decision that highlights the immense pressure he is under, juggling a personal quest, the command of his army, and now a crucial diplomatic meeting. The journey to the royal palace further underscores Matt's internal conflict regarding his identity. He rides in his simple coat, a stark contrast to the courtly finery of his companions, Thorn and Talmanes. Their discussion about his attire becomes a larger debate about his status. Mat stubbornly clings to his identity as a farmer, vehemently denying that his marriage to the Shonchan Empress, Tuon, has made him a nobleman. This denial is a defense mechanism against a life of responsibility he never sought. His discomfort is amplified during the ride through the city, where he is met by curious crowds and confronted by the wild rumors that have grown around him. In a conversation with his escort, Charles Gaibon, Mat is forced to deny exaggerated tales of his exploits, from hanging on a tree for 9 days to dueling an IL king for the Dragon Reborn. The most unsettling rumor, one that comes uncomfortably close to the truth, involves him entering the realm of death and receiving his spear and a prophecy. This sequence showcases how Mat's reality is being eclipsed by his own legend, a myth he has no control over and finds deeply unnerving. Upon arriving at the palace, Mat's expectations of a tense and formal audience are immediately upended. Elaine, now Queen of Andor, greets him, and especially Thorne, with genuine warmth and emotion, far cry from the haughty girl he remembered. The atmosphere is further relaxed by the revelation that Elaine is pregnant with twins, a fact that stuns Mat and momentarily shifts the focus to a more personal, friendly level. However, the true purpose of the visit soon takes center stage. Mat presents Eludra's designs for a revolutionary new form of weaponry, massive metal tubes she calls dragons, capable of launching iron projectiles over a mile. Elaine's reaction is not one of skepticism, but of immediate and sharp-witted comprehension. She instantly grasps the strategic, nation-altering potential of these weapons, seeing them as the key to Andor's future military supremacy. This insight transforms her from an old friend into a shrewd monarch before Mat's eyes. This leads to the chapter's central conflict, a tense negotiation over the ownership and control of the dragons. Mat, representing the independence of the band, insists the weapons are his discovery. Elaine, as queen, argues that her kingdom's resources are essential for their creation, and thus they belong to Andor. The conversation becomes a strategic battle of wills, with Elaine offering to hire the band under a long-term contract, a proposal Mat views as a gilded chain. Realizing he is at an impasse and that he cannot let this opportunity slip away, Mat plays his most valuable card. He places his Foxhead medallion, his protection against the One Power, on the table, offering it to Elaine to study for a single day as an incentive to begin production immediately. This is a profound gamble, as he knows the deadly golem is hunting him within the city, making him completely vulnerable without the medallion's protection. The stakes are raised and a final deal is struck. Elaine will get to study the medallion for 3 days. Andor will fund and produce the dragons, and the band will have exclusive use of them while under contract, but Andor will retain a 4-to-1 majority of the weapons if the band should ever leave its service. The meeting concludes with the political and personal threads being tied up. Elaine offers Tom the position of Andor's official court bard, which includes a full pardon for past transgressions, an offer he considers. As a final act, Elaine teases Mat about his worn coat and his inevitable ascension to the nobility, promising to grant him a title herself, much to his vocal protest. As Mat and Thorne depart, Mat attempts to frame the outcome as a personal victory of his negotiation skills, though Thorne's silent amusement suggests otherwise. The chapter ends on a light-hearted note, with Thorne suggesting their first order of business before dinner is to buy Mat a coat more befitting a man who bargains with queens, bringing the narrative full circle back to the question of Mat's appearance and his place in this new world. Chapter 20. A Choice. This chapter begins with Nynaeve being escorted by Rosil, the new mistress of novices, into the depths of the White Tower to undergo the formal test for the Aes Sedai Shaw. From the outset, a core conflict is established between tradition and Nynaeve's established identity. When Rosil suggests she move her Great Serpent ring to a finger more appropriate for an accepted, Nynaeve firmly refuses. She articulates her reasoning with precision. The Amirlin Egwene has already named her Aes Sedai, and to act as a lesser-ranked woman would be to undermine the Amirlin's authority. This small act of defiance sets the tone for the entire ordeal, framing the test not as a plea for acceptance, but as a formal proof of a status she already holds. Upon entering the testing chamber, the gravity of the situation is made apparent by the assembly of powerful eyes, Sedai, present, including a sitter from every Aja and the Amirlin herself. It is explained that this test is actively manipulated by the sisters, who will shape the challenges Nynaeve faces inside the ter'angreal. Her unconventional answers to the traditional opening questions further alienate the more rigid sisters, as she speaks of demonstrating her worthiness rather than discovering it. Inside the ter'angreal, a disorienting and brutal series of trials commences. She is stripped of her memories, retaining only the knowledge of the 100 weaves she must complete, and a set of seemingly arbitrary rules. She must walk at a measured pace to designated markers and can only channel upon reaching them. The trials are a masterclass in psychological torment, designed specifically to attack her composure and her deepest values. She is forced to walk calmly toward a marker while a village is destroyed by a volcano, and she must maintain a steady pace while being pursued by monstrous Trollocs. One of the most harrowing tests involves being swarmed by biting insects while hearing the screams of a child drowning nearby, forcing her to choose between completing a weave and attempting a rescue. In another, she discovers an orphanage of children dying from sickness and must walk away from their whimpers to a marker in another room before she can help them. These scenarios relentlessly pit the test's nonsensical rules against her fundamental nature as a healer and protector. Her breaking point arrives during a vision of the two rivers under attack by horrific, tentacled shadow spawn. Seeing her friends, including Perrin, about to be slaughtered, Nynaeve consciously rejects the test's constraints. She reasons that no true Aes Sedai would adhere to a rule that results in the deaths of innocents. She runs toward the marker and, in an even greater act of defiance, draws upon the one power before reaching it, something that should be impossible. She unleashes her power to defend her home, demonstrating that her priority is saving lives, not obeying protocol. The final and most intense trial places her in the desolate ruins of Malkia, where she witnesses Lan, her husband, fighting a losing battle against a pack of deadly darkhounds. This is the ultimate test of her allegiances. In this moment, she fully realizes that her love for Lan and her commitment to him are more fundamental to her identity than any title the White Tower could bestow. She again breaks the rules, unleashing the forbidden weave of balefire to protect him, an act that destabilizes the very fabric of the ter'angreal. She chooses him unequivocally, fighting alongside him and ultimately escaping with him through a portal, fully expecting to have failed the test by doing so. Nynaeve is violently ejected from the ter'angreal, physically and emotionally shattered by the ordeal. The observing sitters are deeply divided. The more dogmatic sisters, like Barasine of the Red Aja, declare that she failed by showing rage and breaking every rule. Nynaeve, weak but resolute, defends her actions, arguing that she behaved as a true Aes Sedai should by prioritizing people over abstract rules. In a private conversation, Egwene reveals that Nynaeve's extensive experience in the world of dreams gave her the unique ability to subvert the test's ingrained limitations, and that the sisters, angered by her defiance, had made the trials progressively more cruel in a battle of wills. The vote on her passing results in a tie, which is broken by Saerin of the Brown Aja, who passes Nynaeve by the slimmest of margins. Having earned the shawl on their terms, Nynaeve's first act is not one of prayer or tradition, but of immediate purpose. She travels to the camp of Aes Sedai at the Black Tower and confronts Myrelle. Leveraging the fact that she has yet to swear the 3 oaths, she demands the transfer of Lan's warder bond. The chapter closes as the bond settles into her mind, a profound and beautiful awareness that confirms Lan is alive and affirms the choices she made, solidifying her identity not in a title, but in her love and convictions. Chapter 21. An unlocked door. The chapter opens within Perrin Aybara's command pavilion, a space once again filled to capacity with leaders and advisors gathered to hear a consolidated report on the state of the world. Seonid of the Green, Aja, delivers a stark and businesslike intelligence briefing, painting a picture of a world in turmoil. She confirms that Caerhien remains in political chaos without a ruler on the Sun throne, but that Elaine Trakand has finally, after a prolonged struggle, secured her own throne in Andor. Perrin, for his part, is only half present, his mind pulled away by his recent, intense training in the Wolf Dream, a distraction that fuels his own insecurities about his leadership abilities. Seonid continues, stating her certainty that the Lord Dragon, Rand al'Thor, is currently in Arad Doman, a tactical decision that makes sense given the region's instability and its proximity to the encroaching Shon Chan. The Wise Ones remain silent, having likely already received this information from their own sources. The discussion of the Shon Chan prompts a dark pronouncement from the Wise One Adara, who declares that the Aiel will demand the release of their captive channelers in a year and a day. Failure to comply will result in a blood feud, a vow that even the Dragon Reborn cannot command them to break. The conversation shifts to Perrin's own plans. He dismisses the idea of traveling to Tyr or Caerhien, deciding that the most logical course of action is to go to Andor and confer with the newly crowned Queen Elaine. This decision is met with some concern about how Elaine will receive him and his foreign troops, but Perrin is confident he can make her understand. Before any of that can happen, however, he must deal with the Children of the Light, who have refused all attempts at negotiation and demanded a battle. Perrin reluctantly agrees to give them the fight they seek. The meeting takes a dramatic turn when Seonid mentions that the maidens sent to Andor confirmed the rumors of one of the Forsaken operating there. Perrin elaborates that Rand had identified the man as Ravin, who had masqueraded as a nobleman named Gabriel and used the One power to manipulate and ultimately murder the former queen. This historical revelation triggers an unexpectedly violent reaction from the serving woman, Magdin. She drops her tray with a crash of shattering porcelain, her face a mask of shock. Her intense, almost accusatory questioning of Perrin reveals a depth of personal investment that goes far beyond simple shock, and she abruptly excuses herself, leaving a trail of confusion in her wake. After the meeting disperses, Perrin has a private exchange with the enigmatic secretary Balwa. The scribe confirms that the White Cloaks are allied with the Shon Chan, and that Rand is indeed seeking a truce with the invaders. More disturbingly, Balwa produces sketches of Perrin and Matt Cawthon that are circulating in criminal circles, with large bounties offered for their corpses. When pressed about his own past, Balwa confesses that his former, respected employer was murdered by the White Cloaks, explaining his obsessive hatred for the organization. He refuses an offer of higher pay, passionately explaining that for him, information is the true currency, and serving a man like Perrin is a greater reward than any amount of gold. Perrin is left deeply unsettled by the wanted posters, realizing for the first time that he may need an army simply for his own protection. The narrative then makes a jarring leap to the war-torn borderlands of Arad Doman, throwing the reader into the heart of a desperate battle commanded by the great general Rodel Iturralde. He is conducting a masterful but precarious fighting retreat against an overwhelming horde of Trollocs, attempting to preserve his army while falling back toward the city of Maradon, whose leaders have refused him entry. The plan is a textbook delaying action, but the brittle discipline of men pushed to their limits shatters when one of his lieutenants, a man named Lidrin, succumbs to battle madness. Lidrin's suicidal charge creates a catastrophic breach in the defensive pike wall. The entire formation collapses into chaos, compounded by a premature and unauthorized trumpet call for retreat. Iturralde is forced into the heart of the melee, fighting for his life as his lines disintegrate. He is ultimately unhorsed, his leg broken, and finds himself helpless before Amir Dral. Just as the Fade closes in for the kill, salvation arrives in the most unexpected form. a massive cavalry charge erupting from the gates of Maradon itself. The Saldaean relief force routs the disorganized Trollocs, and the remnants of Iturralde's army are allowed into the city. Rescued by the force's commander Yoeli, Iturralde is given a grim warning that the man's actions in saving him will likely cost him his own life. The final section shifts focus again, this time to a far more internal and psychological battlefield centered on Morgus Trakand. Reeling from hearing that her former lover, Gabriel, was in fact the forsaken Ravin, she seeks solitude to process the horrifying implications. She reflects on a life spent fighting against manipulation, only to fall victim to the most insidious form of it imaginable. Her solitude is interrupted by a heartbroken Talonvor, who announces his intention to leave for Tyr, convinced that his love is unrequited and that Morgus still pines for Gabriel. In a moment of profound vulnerability, Morgus shares the truth she has just learned. She explains the concept of compulsion, articulating that what she felt for Gabriel was not love, but a twisted, magically enforced bond of hatred and desire. She confesses that a part of her would still be helpless to his commands, but clarifies that it is an unnatural violation, not genuine affection. This confession shatters Talonvor's bitter assumptions and reignites a fragile hope within him. Seeing his reaction, Morgus asks him to delay his departure from the camp, a request he immediately and devotedly agrees to, leaving her alone once more to contend with her tumultuous thoughts. Chapter 22. The End of a Legend. The chapter opens with Gawain Trakand wandering the grounds of the White Tower in the dead of night. The darkness serves as a metaphor for his own internal state, concealing the tower's recent battle scars just as he attempts to suppress his own turmoil and lack of purpose. Clad in a uniform signifying no specific loyalty, he feels adrift. An instinctual pull leads him toward Egwene's chambers, a path he has guarded for nearly a week, but he forces himself away, determined to respect her command for him to stay clear. Seeking a distraction from his confining thoughts, he encounters a group of his former soldiers, the younglings, gambling with tower guards. His initial impulse is to reprimand them, but their spokesman, Kalark, reveals a shift in their aspirations. The experience of real battle has transformed them from hopeful warder candidates into seasoned soldiers who now value their camaraderie over the solitary life of protecting a single eye's Sedai. Recognizing the validity of their feelings and displaying a remnant of his leadership, Gawain offers to arrange for them to be formally integrated into the Tower Guard as their own division. He declines their hopeful invitation for him to join them, acknowledging that his own path lies elsewhere, though he remains uncertain of its destination. Still seeking clarity, Gawain goes to the quarters of General Gareth Bryne. He finds the old commander absorbed in strategic planning for the last battle, his meticulous preparations making Gawain's own romantic troubles feel insignificant. He explains his predicament with Egwene, complaining that she has forbidden him from offering his protection. Bryne's counsel is characteristically blunt. He reminds Gawain that his past attempts to help have often been disastrously counterproductive. He then delivers a sharp analysis of Gawain's character, contrasting his impulsive, passion-driven nature with his brother Gallad's rigid, pre-calculated morality. Bryne advises Gawain to focus on building his own identity and purpose, separate from his devotion to Egwene, suggesting that a man must be more than a single-minded goal to be a worthy partner. Their conversation is cut short by the arrival of Siwan Sanchi, who first chides Bryne for working too late, and then scolds Gawain for attempting to dictate terms to the Amarlin, prompting his hasty departure. Restless and without direction, Gawain finds himself once again drawn to the hallway near Egwene's chambers. Just as he resolves to leave, he detects a faint sound and notices a patch of shadow that seems to unnaturally repel his gaze. From this distortion, a black-clad assassin emerges and hurls a knife at him. Gawain evades the attack and engages the assailant in a desperate sword fight. His opponent is preternaturally fast, employing sword forms he doesn't recognize, and the sheer strangeness of the assassin makes it difficult for Gawain to focus his attacks. After a brief but intense struggle in which Gawain barely holds his own, the assassin flees as the sounds of approaching guards echo through the halls. Panicked by the thought that the killer may have come from Gawain's room, Gawain finds her door unlocked and bursts inside to protect her. He is immediately neutralized by a weave of the One power, finding himself ensnared in invisible bonds, gagged, and left dangling helplessly from the ceiling. Egwene then appears from her bedroom, fully dressed, unharmed, and radiating profound annoyance. The perspective shifts to Matt Cawthon, who is hiding his identity behind a scarf in a low Kemlin tavern. He feels vulnerable without his fox-head medallion, which is still with Elaine, and is deeply unsettled by the wild, exaggerated rumors circulating about his alter ego, the Prince of the Ravens. These legends, he fears, are making him a target. He meets with Tom and Noel to finalize their plan to rescue Moiraine from the Tower of Genjay. They review their preparations, which are based on an old rhyme. They have acquired iron weapons to bind the creatures, musical instruments to dazzle them, and a supply of Eludra's fireworks and explosives to provide blinding fire. Matt staunchly rejects the idea of bargaining with the Elfin and Elfin, insisting that the creatures are fundamentally deceptive, and that Moiraine's own message suggested they must break the rules of the game and enter with force. Later, walking alone through the misty, unnervingly quiet streets of Camelin, Matt's unease grows, and he longs for the protection of his medallion against the golem he fears is hunting him. He stumbles upon what appears to be a common alleyway mugging, and feeling a surge of relief at the return to normalcy, he easily dispatches the 4 attackers to save their victim. However, his act of heroism is met with betrayal. The rescued man recognizes him and lunges with a dagger in an assassination attempt. Matt instinctively defends himself, using his scarf to entangle the blade before killing the man with 2 precisely thrown knives to the eyes. A search of the body reveals gold coins and a folded bounty poster bearing his own face, leaving Matt disgusted that his attempt to do good nearly got him killed. Finally, the narrative moves to Birgitte, who is standing guard while Queen Elaine attends a play. Birgitte is bored by the performance and lost in thought, reflecting on her strange, unprecedented existence as a hero of the Horn, ripped from the cycle and made a warder. She is tormented by her fading memories of her eternal love, Gaidal Cain. A guard informs her of an intruder captured at one of the palace gates, and seeking a distraction, she goes to investigate. The intruder, she discovers, is Matt, who has deliberately allowed himself to be caught simply to speak with her. They leave the palace for a nearby tavern, where Matt reveals his desperate plan to enter the Tower of Genjay. He asks for her knowledge, knowing from a story she told Olva that she is familiar with the place. Birgitte warns him in the strongest possible terms against the mission, explaining that entering through the tower itself, rather than the portal archways, negates any treaties and leaves visitors vulnerable to being killed. Matt remains resolute, demonstrating his supernatural luck by flipping a handful of coins that all land heads up, arguing that impossible odds are in his favor. Resigned to his stubbornness, Birgitte shares the tragic, forgotten legend of her own visit to the tower in a past life. She sought a magical healing for a mortally wounded Gaidal, but her clever plan to navigate the twisted realm with a trail of iron dust failed. She and Gaidal were cornered and killed by the inhabitants. Her story is not one of survival, but of failure and death. Despite the grim tale, she provides Matt with crucial intelligence, explaining that the creatures feed on emotion and that his chosen tools of iron, fire, and music are his only hope, though their power will diminish over time. As she speaks, the narrative comes to a sudden climax. Birgitte feels a violent surge of agony and rage through her warder bond, realizing instantly that Elaine is in grave danger and has been hurt. She and Matt abandon their drinks and race from the tavern back toward the palace. Chapter 23, Foxheads. The chapter opens with Elaine Trakand attending a theatrical performance, a political necessity to appease the Andorran nobility. Her mind, however, is far from the stage. She is preoccupied with the intricate foxhead medallion, a terangrial that grants immunity to the One Power. Her own attempts to replicate this artifact have been frustratingly unsuccessful. While her copies can deflect weaker weaves, they fail against stronger ones and critically prevent the user from channeling altogether, a flaw the original does not possess. This internal struggle over the medallion underscores Elaine's dual role as both a queen navigating complex politics and an Aes Sedai pushing the boundaries of her knowledge. She engages in a subtle power play with Lady Elorian, a key noble whose support she needs to court, by inviting her to the play but deliberately keeping her distance, a calculated move designed to make Elorian reconsider her opposition. A spark of inspiration strikes Elaine during a conversation with another noble. She conceives of a daring and reckless plan to interrogate the captive Black Aja sisters herself. Discovering that her ever-watchful guardian, Birgit, has conveniently been drawn away by Matt Cawthon, Elaine seizes the moment. She uses the One Power and an angriel to craft a terrifying disguise, transforming herself into a floating, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes, intending to pose as one of the Forsaken to intimidate the prisoners into revealing their secrets. Her chosen target is Chesmal, a high-ranking dark friend. The initial phase of the interrogation is a success. Under the impression she is speaking to a Great One, Chesmal reveals crucial intelligence. The Dark One's forces are actively hunting Matt Cawthon, and there is a mysterious deadline for a planned invasion of Andor. However, Elaine's carefully constructed plan spectacularly collapses when a rescue party arrives, led by the treacherous secretary of Sylvaes Cairn and two other Black Aja sisters, T-Mail and Eldrith. The dungeon cell erupts into a chaotic battle of the One Power. Elaine relies on the genuine medallion's protection to survive the initial onslaught, but she is slammed into a wall, breaking her shoulder and losing the artifact in the struggle. Just as she regains control and subdues her attackers, a far deadlier threat emerges from the shadows. Doylin Mellor, a dark friend with a twisted obsession with her, ambushes Elaine, stabbing her viciously in the side and stealing the medallion. As Elaine bleeds out, on the verge of death, and shielded from the source, Mellor callously orders Chesmal to heal her, revealing that his reward for service is to possess the Queen. In a moment of desperate ingenuity, Elaine uses her failed copy of the medallion. Tricking Chesmal into grabbing it, she temporarily severs the Black Sister's ability to channel, breaking the shield upon herself. Elaine immediately embraces the source and unleashes a torrent of deadly fire, incinerating Chesmal. Mellor, now holding the real medallion and immune to her power, brutally murders his own accomplices. Elaine is forced to bring the ceiling down with a weave of earth to stop him. Mellor escapes, but in the chaos he drops the real medallion, absconding with the worthless fake. The chapter's main plotline concludes with the arrival of Birgitta and Matt to a scene of death and destruction, finding a wounded but triumphant Elaine who has survived by a razor's edge. The chapter then shifts perspective to Gawain Trakand in Tar Valon. He faces the cold fury of Egwene Alvear, the Amirlin seat. She admonishes him for interfering with her elaborate trap for the Forsaken Mesana, arguing that his well-intentioned effort to protect her has instead warned their enemy. The argument exposes a deep fracture in their relationship. Gawain sees his actions as the duty of a warder protecting the woman he loves, while Egwene sees it as an act of insubordination from a soldier who failed to obey the commands of his leader. Feeling rejected and realizing their fundamental desires are in conflict, Gawain makes two decisive choices. First, he ensures the future of his loyal soldiers by arranging their integration into the Tower Guard. Second, he resolves to leave Tar Valon and seek out his sister, Elaine, in Caemlyn. The final section follows Lanman Dragarin on his lonely ride toward the Blight. His solitary quest is becoming anything but. He is irritated to find his followers embracing the very symbolism he rejects, such as a banner of the Golden Crane. His frustration boils over when he discovers his small group has swelled overnight into a small army, complete with a massive supply train of 24 wagons. This development forces Lan to accept a new reality. His quiet, personal war is over. He is now, against all his intentions, the leader of a growing cause. Resigned, he makes his followers swear an oath of secrecy, a final attempt to exert control over a destiny that is rapidly choosing him, rather than the other way around. Chapter 24, To Make a Stand. The chapter opens with Elaine Trakand being firmly sentenced to a week of bed rest by her midwife, Melfane. Following the near-fatal stabbing, the examination confirms that her unborn children are safe, but the shock to her system necessitates complete inactivity. Elaine, burdened by her duties as queen, immediately protests the confinement as an impossibility. However, Melfane remains unyielding, asserting her authority as the queen's midwife and making it clear that the entire palace staff would support her in enforcing the order to protect the royal heirs. Elaine, imagining the humiliation of being physically restrained by her own guards, reluctantly submits. Her capitulation is met with a look of grim satisfaction from Birgitte, who still harbors anger over Elaine's reckless solo mission. Once Melfane departs, a tense confrontation unfolds between the two women. Birgitte expresses her deep sense of betrayal, questioning why Elaine would not trust her enough to let her help, effectively rendering her role as warder meaningless. She compares Elaine's actions to that of a glory-seeking fool charging into battle unprotected. Shaken by the depth of her friend's hurt, Elaine admits she intends to be more cautious in the future. Matt Cawthon then enters the chamber, and Elaine relays a critical piece of intelligence gathered during her interrogation. The Black Ager had been actively planning his assassination, a threat that seems more specific and intense than the general danger they all face. Despite this revelation and surviving the night, Elaine feels a profound sense of failure. 3 dangerous Black Ager members escaped. She learned of an impending invasion of Andor without any specifics, and her only concrete reward is a week of forced idleness. The scene concludes as she returns Matt's protective medallion, having managed to create a partial copy of its properties. The narrative then shifts to the besieged city of Maradon in the Borderlands, where Rodel Iturralde walks with the Saldean officer, Yoeli. The city is a grim, tense fortress, mostly evacuated and bearing the scars of recent internal conflict among its defenders. Yoeli explains that he has seized command from the Queen's appointed governor, Lord Vram Torquemen, an act many consider treasonous. Iturralde and Yoeli confront Torquemen, who proves to be an arrogant and dismissive man, completely oblivious to the apocalyptic scale of the Trolloc threat. He scoffs at Iturralde's allegiance to the Dragon Reborn and threatens both men with execution. Iturralde, disgusted by his refusal to aid in the city's defense, bluntly accuses him of being either a fool or a dark friend. Later, Yoeli confesses to Iturralde that he believes he must demand his own execution for breaking his oaths and killing his countrymen, a rigid adherence to honor that Iturralde finds chilling. Iturralde realizes he is now committed to defending Maradon and its people, accepting it as the place where he will make his final stand. The chapter's final and longest section follows Perrin Aybara. Plagued by the impending, unavoidable battle with the White Cloaks, he enters the Wolf Dream to scout their encampment. There, he is led on a chase by Hopper and his pack, forcing him to fully embrace his wolf nature to keep pace. This experience leads to a monumental epiphany. His violent, focused rage is not a product of his connection to the wolves, but rather an innate part of his own character that made him a wolf brother in the first place. The challenge is not to control the wolves, but to control himself. Under Hopper's guidance, Perrin begins to master new skills within the dream, learning to travel instantly by focusing on his destination and to track others by their unique spiritual scent. This training is brutally interrupted when Slayer, the wolves' ancient enemy, appears and kills one of the pack. Enraged, Perrin uses his newfound tracking ability to pursue Slayer instantly. Their confrontation is swift and violent. Slayer demonstrates immense power, manipulating the dreamscape itself and possessing inhuman strength. He nearly kills Perrin, who only survives by desperately willing himself away at the last moment. Shaken, Perrin awakens and seeks solace in the physical act of chopping wood, reflecting on his nature and the immense burdens of leadership. He is joined by Elias Mashara, with whom he discusses the difficulties of living as a wolf brother. The conversation solidifies Perrin's resolve. Accepting his complex nature and the responsibilities he can no longer evade, he instructs Elias to inform his commanders that he has made a decision. The following day, they will march to meet the White Cloaks on the battlefield they have chosen. Chapter 25. Return to Bandar Eban. The chapter begins with Rand al-Thor and Min Farshaw arriving in the city of Bandar Eban through a gateway, their entrance deliberately unannounced and discreet. Accompanying them are a minimal guard of 2 maidens and the Ashaman Naef. In a powerful symbolic moment, Rand's very presence seems to repel the oppressive darkness hanging over the city as the clouds overhead immediately begin to part, allowing sunlight to shine down. However, this glimmer of light is starkly contrasted by the scene of urban decay they witness upon emerging from their alley. The Damani capital has descended into a state of profound squalor, its streets and buildings overflowing with starving, sickly, and desperate refugees. The sight unleashes a wave of crushing guilt within Rand. He confides in Min that he is responsible for this suffering, having abandoned the city when it no longer served his strategic purposes. This marks a significant development in his character, as he now fully internalizes the human cost of his past callousness. In response to his despair, Min offers a vision of hope, foretelling a future where he wields a sword of light against darkness and restores the world. Critically, her sight then expands, revealing the latent potential within the desperate populace. She sees a beggar who will become a great captain, a common woman who will become Aiz Sedai, and a thug who will perform an act of heroism. This revelation galvanizes Rand into action. He approaches a former soldier, a man named Durnham, and inspires him to begin restoring order. Demonstrating a newfound wisdom in his leadership, Rand provides the necessary supplies but insists that the city's own people must be the ones to reclaim it, forbidding outside soldiers from intervening. In a remarkably short period, a disciplined force is organized from the ranks of the refugees. They march to the city's docks in search of food, where they discover the reason for the starvation. The vast stores of grain brought by the sea folk have seemingly been tainted by the Dark One. However, in the chapter's climactic miracle, Rand reveals this corruption to be a mere illusion. He opens a sack to reveal perfect golden grain, demonstrating his power to directly counteract the Shadow's influence. He then organizes the distribution of the food and establishes a new leadership for the city, appointing Durnham as its military commander and the dockmaster, Iralin, as steward, before stating that he must depart again in a day's time. Chapter 26. The chapter begins with Perrin Ibarra leading his considerable and varied army toward an unavoidable confrontation. He feels a deep uncertainty about his recent command to burn the Wolfhead banners, a symbol that has come to define him, suggesting a man at war with his own identity. The air itself feels wrong, tainted with a stale scent that Perrin's heightened senses register as an omen. This sense of unease is immediately validated when his 2 Ashaman, Grady and Neild, reveal a critical and disturbing magical failure. Their attempts to create gateways for traveling have been intermittently failing. This removes a key strategic option for retreat and hints at a deeper corruption in the world, a wrongness that Perrin has sensed in connection with the mysterious Slayer. As they arrive at the battlefield, facing the immaculate and disciplined lines of the White Cloaks, Perrin experiences a profound moment of clarity. He contemplates the difference between his old axe and his new hammer. The axe, he realizes, was a tool made only for killing, a symbol of the destructive path he felt forced upon. The hammer, however, can be used to create as well as to destroy. This epiphany represents a pivotal shift in his philosophy. He understands now that he has a choice beyond simple violence. He will not be a tool of destruction, but a leader who forges his own path. Acting on this new conviction, Perrin halts his entire army and implements a radical strategy. Instead of preparing for battle, he sets out to prevent it. He summons his channeling allies, but the Aes Sedai refuse to participate, rigidly bound by their oaths not to use the one power as a weapon. The Wise Ones and the Ashaman, however, comply. They unleash a terrifying display of power, tearing a massive trench in the earth directly in front of the White Cloak cavalry. This is immediately followed by a volley of arrows from the Two Rivers longbowmen that fills the chasm. This act is not an attack but a psychological demonstration, a clear message of the devastating power Perrin commands and the terrible cost the White Cloaks would pay to charge his lines. From the White Cloak perspective, their commander, Galad Damodred, understands the message perfectly. Though urged to attack by his zealous subordinates Bornhald and Bayer, the Honourable Galad recognizes that Perrin could have annihilated his vanguard. He agrees to a parley, seeing a chance to avoid bloodshed. The ensuing negotiation, however, quickly breaks down. Perrin freely admits to killing 2 White Cloaks years ago, but insists it was self-defense after they killed his wolf friend. To Galad, this is a confession of both murder and consorting with creatures of the shadow, and they reach an impasse over finding a mutually acceptable judge for a trial. Just as the parley is about to collapse and violence seems inevitable, the chapter delivers its stunning climax. Galad recognizes a serving woman in Perrin's retinue. It is his stepmother, Morgus Trakand, the former queen of Andor, whom he believed was dead. The shock is profound for both of them. This unexpected reunion provides the very solution the impasse required. Perrin, seizing the opportunity, proposes Morgus, a respected ruler renowned for her fairness, to serve as the judge. Believing in his mother's impartiality, Galad immediately accepts. The battle is averted, replaced by an agreement to hold a formal, legally binding trial in 3 days, with Morgus presiding. The conflict of steel is transformed into a conflict of law, all hinging on the judgment of a queen long thought lost. Chapter 27. A Call to Stand. The chapter opens with Egwene Alver, the Amirlin seat, reviewing a letter from Darlin Cisnera, the King of Tyr. Darlin's message is a masterclass in political maneuvering. He pledges his loyalty not to the title Rand al'Thor was given, but to the man who saved his nation, acknowledging that the Dragon Reborn's erratic path is a necessary evil, like a captain beaching a ship to save it from a hurricane. He agrees to attend Egwene's summit to discuss the breaking of the seals, but with a critical caveat. Due to the looming Shan-Chan threat, he will only bring a fraction of his army. Egwene recognizes the boldness of putting such treasonous thoughts to paper, but finds his condition unacceptable. She responds by offering a high-stakes promise, gateways for his army's immediate return should Tyr be attacked, urging him that only a united front of overwhelming force can hope to sway the Dragon Reborn from his course. Her political chess game continues as she plans her correspondence with Ilion, a nation even more imperiled by the Shan-Chan. This is interrupted by 2 successive and dire reports from her keeper, Sylviana. First, the last battle has truly begun, with massive Trolloc armies pouring across the Blight border. Second, and more immediately, the Hall of the Tower is convening in a secret session, a direct challenge to her authority. Egwene confronts them, walking into their clandestine meeting and calmly taking her seat. She listens as her political rivals, Ramanda and Lelaine, lead a charge to curtail her power, fearing she will use a declaration of war to become a tyrant. In a brilliant display of political judo, Egwene feigns being cornered and allows them to propose a solution. The Hall will take control of the army, while she will be relegated to managing diplomacy with the world's monarchs. As they rush to vote this into effect, her allies arrive, sealing the decision. It is only after the vote is cast that one of the sitters realizes the trap. By giving Egwene authority over all monarchs, they have just granted her sole and undisputed command over any dealings with the Dragon Reborn himself. Having secured this victory, Egwene presses her advantage. She shames the sitters for their divisive secrecy in the face of Tarmon and proposes sweeping legal reforms to prevent such secret meetings from ever happening again. Under the weight of her argument, the entire hall votes her changes into law, fundamentally strengthening the Amerlin seat for generations to come. The chapter concludes with Egwene setting another plan in motion, using two young accepted to spread rumors that will lure a hidden Black Age assassin into a trap within the world of dreams, showcasing her relentless, multi-pronged strategy as the world descends into war. Chapter 28, Oddities. The chapter begins in the aftermath of Perrin's tense negotiation with the White Cloaks. Back in their tent, Fael questions his surprising decision to submit to a trial, a move that felt both invigorating and deeply unsettling to her. Perrin explains that his senses are screaming that something is profoundly wrong. He speaks of an alien scent on the wind and, more disturbingly, the complete and unnatural absence of any wolves in the area. This eerie silence in the animal world, coupled with the oppressive, strange sky, convinces him that he must seek answers before the trial. He declares his intention to enter the wolf dream, Teleran Ryod, to investigate the source of this spreading wrongness. Their conversation then shifts to Fael's lingering anger over Meg Din, who was revealed to be Queen Morgus of Andor. Fael feels utterly foolish for not having known, but Perrin defends the Queen's caution, reasoning that her flight from one of the Forsaken necessitated such deep secrecy. Perrin's newfound confidence in standing up for himself mollifies Fael somewhat. She remains deeply worried about the trial, but he reassures her that it is merely a tactic to buy time and avoid unnecessary slaughter, explaining that he senses the White Cloak captain, Damodred, is more reasonable than his fanatical followers. As Perrin succumbs to exhaustion, Fael's sharp political mind files away a potentially useful observation, the immediate and powerful interest the Lady Berylyn showed in Captain Damodred. Perrin's consciousness enters the wolf dream, where he finds himself in a distorted forest beneath a malevolent sky, his back against a massive, seamless steel tower that radiates an unnatural aura. His wolf brother, Hopper, appears and chides him for being drawn to such an evil place. Hopper leads him to where a bizarre phenomenon has reappeared. A vast, translucent dome of violet glass, miles wide, that has descended upon the land. Perrin senses that several of his wolf allies are trapped inside, being hunted by the malevolent figure known as Slayer. The dome proves to be a formidable barrier, blocking Perrin's ability to travel through it by will alone. He now understands the wolves' panicked, trapped sensations. Enraged at the thought of Slayer using this construct as a private hunting ground, Perrin attempts to force his way through. Simply touching the dome drains his strength and paralyzes him, a terrifying experience that leaves him as helpless as the wolves he seeks to save. Hopper, demonstrating mastery over the dream world, shows that one can pass through the barrier by maintaining an unshakable sense of self. Impatient for a lesson, Perrin uses a more brute force method, charging with all his might so that his momentum carries his limp body through to the other side. Inside, he finds Slayer has already wounded one wolf, Sparks. In a coordinated effort, Perrin agrees to rescue the injured wolf while Hopper and the others distract the hunter. After a tense flight to the dome's edge, Slayer suddenly appears and blocks their escape. Reacting in an instant, Perrin teleports himself and the injured Sparks back to his entry point and hurls them through the barrier to safety before escaping to the distant slopes of Dragonmount. Hopper soon joins them, confirming the others escaped, but that one wolf was killed. Perrin, burning to confront Slayer but acknowledging he is not yet ready, resolves to use the dream world every night to practice and investigate the wrongness plaguing the waking world, convinced it is all connected. The narrative then shifts to the besieged city in Saldea, where Lord Rodel Iturralde is suffering from the oppressive heat and his own gnawing doubts. The ceaseless drumming of the Trolloc army and his tenuous position fighting for a man he barely knows weigh heavily on him. His unease is proven justified when he is summoned to the walls. There, his senior Ashaman, Dipe, reports a terrifying development. A group of male channelers are working a powerful weave within the enemy camp. Ituralde immediately understands that the Shadow Spawn have been waiting to unleash their own version of the Ashaman to simply tear the walls down. Moments later, a catastrophic explosion obliterates a huge section of the northern wall. In the ensuing chaos, Ituralde is injured, and his lead Ashaman, Dipe, is grievously wounded. The city is lost. As Ituralde prepares to order a desperate retreat through gateways, Captain Yoeli arrives with news of a distant watchfire, signaling that reinforcements are on their way. Pleading with the great captain to show him what that title means, Yoeli begs Ituralde to hold the city. Moved, Ituralde abandons the retreat and orchestrates a brilliant, desperate gambit. He orders the Ashaman to unleash their full power on the breach for half an hour before falling back, leaving the gap undefended. The Trollocs, seeing a city in chaos, pour into the trap. The fleeing soldiers are a lure, funneling the horde down a wide avenue where they are ambushed by archers from all sides and then crushed by a devastating cavalry charge. The slaughter is immense, and the terrified survivors flee the city. Instead of remanning the wall, Ituralde orders his forces to prepare for a new kind of warfare, a series of ambushes and feints designed to make the Trollocs fearful and cautious, buying precious time. The chapter closes on Ituralde's chilling private thought. Despite the success of his masterful plan, his every instinct is screaming that he should have abandoned the city hours ago. Chapter 29. A dreadful premonition. The chapter opens in the late afternoon glow of Perrin's war camp, where Fail walks with Berelin and Alliandre, contemplating her husband's inscrutable plans. With his trial before the White Cloaks looming in just 2 days, Faile understands that Perrin's delay is a strategic move to buy his Ashaman more time to fix the mysterious problems plaguing their gateways. The camp itself is a paradox of growth and tension. While refugees continue to swell their ranks to nearly 25,000 trained fighters, scout reports confirm that the opposing White Cloak army is also steadily growing. Fail's thoughts drift to the strange alien landscape, so different from her northern homeland, a place where a wrong step could lead one into a swamp. The conversation turns to Perrin's motivations, a subject Berelin constantly revisits. She suggests acting as an envoy to the White Cloaks, a notion Fail immediately dismisses, knowing Perrin's mind is set on facing the trial. Fail internally scoffs at Berelin's claim to understand men, reflecting that while Perrin is thoughtful and careful, he is also profoundly direct. People mistakenly search for complex schemes where there is only steadfast, if bullheaded, purpose. Fail recognizes that Perrin's insistence on the trial stems from his deep-seated need to clear his name, an honorable but potentially fatal flaw she loves in him. The discussion is punctuated by a strange moment when Alliandre and Berelin comment on the striking appearance of the new Lord Captain Commander, Galad Damodred. Berelin's uncharacteristic blush and whispered admiration reveal a sudden and powerful infatuation, a development Fail finds both perplexing and alarming. Their promenade is violently interrupted by the emergence of a bubble of evil. The attack is insidious and personal, as every weapon in the vicinity animates with malevolent intent. Fail barely dodges her own knife, and she witnesses Berelin wrestling with a dagger that has torn itself from a hidden sheath. The entire camp erupts into chaos as soldiers and refugees are attacked by their own swords and spears. In the ensuing struggle, a moment of battlefield clarity reveals the solution. Contact with the earth seems to neutralize the enchantment. Fail and the maidens quickly discover that throwing handfuls of soil at the animated weapons causes them to fall inert. They scramble to spread the word, mitigating the disaster, though not before many are wounded. The narrative then shifts to the White Cloak camp, where Morgus is in a quiet but intense conversation with her stepson, Galad. She endeavors to persuade him to abandon the trial against Perrin, but she is met with Galad's rigid, black and white worldview. He is a man who sees only righteous causes in the taint of the shadow, viewing Perrin as the latter. In a masterful stroke of maternal diplomacy and queenly strategy, Morgus challenges his simplistic morality not with argument, but with a story from her own past. She recounts the trial of Tam Felmley, an innocent man she mistakenly sent to the gallows. She forces Galad to confront the uncomfortable truth that even with the best intentions and the guidance of the light, terrible mistakes can be made and innocent people can die. Her point is clear. Justice is not a simple equation, and a good man can do wrong without being evil. Just as their conversation reaches this crucial point, a messenger arrives to report that Perrin's camp is requesting a delay due to a disturbance. Influenced by his mother's words, Galad agrees to consider it, a sign that a seed of doubt has been planted. Back in Perrin's camp, he assesses the aftermath of the attack. Thousands have been injured, and Perrin is resolute. He will not proceed with the trial or risk battle until his army has recovered. He is unwavering in his responsibility to his people. During his rounds, he learns a curious fact. His own hammer remained inert during the attack, the only weapon that was not affected, hinting at its special nature. The chapter takes another somber turn when Tam al-Thor finds Perrin. He breathlessly announces that he must leave the camp immediately on a secret and urgent mission concerning Rand. Bound by an oath to the eyes Sedai involved, Tam can say little more before departing, leaving Perrin without one of his most trusted advisors at a critical moment. The final section of the chapter transports the reader to Caemlyn, where Queen Elaine, under strict orders for bed rest, has cleverly found a way to attend an important event by being carried on a litter to the city walls. She is there to witness the first formal demonstration of Eludra's new weapons, the dragons. The test is a breathtaking success. A massive bronze tube fires an iron sphere with a thunderous roar, obliterating a target on a distant hill with explosive force far beyond any conventional catapult. Elaine immediately grasps the monumental strategic implications of this new technology. These cannons represent a new era of warfare, capable of destruction on a scale previously only achievable with the One Power. She secures Eludra's loyalty and grants her the full resources of Andor to begin production. While Elaine is filled with excitement at the power now at her disposal, her warder, Birgitte, feels a profound sense of unease. As a legendary hero who has witnessed countless ages of battle, Birgitte recognizes this moment not as a triumph, but as a terrifying turning point. The chapter concludes with her solemn observation that the world has just changed in a very large way, and her terrible feeling that it is only the beginning of a darker, more destructive age. Chapter 30. Men Dream. Here, the chapter opens in the deep of night, with Fael inspecting the camp's horse lines. Her conversation with her companions, Lasil and Seland, reveals that their efforts to spy on the White Cloaks have yielded a crucial piece of intelligence. Lasil, using her feminine charms, managed to learn that while the rank-and-file soldiers are hostile and uncooperative, their leader, Galad Damodred, is a far more reasonable man. In a shocking departure from White Cloak dogma, Galad has been advocating for an alliance with the Eyes Sedai to face the coming last battle, a notion that is causing grumbling among his followers. This information gives Fael a potential diplomatic angle she did not previously possess. Her strategic preparations, however, go far beyond diplomacy. In a secret meeting with Daniel Lewin, the acting leader of the Two Rivers Men, Fael confirms her contingency plan for Perrin's trial. She has no faith in a just outcome and has arranged a forceful extraction. The Asherman, Grady, and Neild are on standby to use the One Power to seize Perrin and escape if the verdict goes against him, while a contingent of Two Rivers archers will create a diversion. This plan underscores Fael's pragmatism and her willingness to operate behind her husband's back, knowing his rigid honor would never allow for such a preemptive maneuver. She is preparing for a battle she feels is inevitable. Parallel to these events in the waking world, Perrin is deeply immersed in the wolf dream Tel'aran'rhiod, pushing his abilities under the tutelage of the wolf, Hopper. His training involves learning to impose his will upon the dream's fluid reality. Hopper then introduces him to a more perilous form of practice, entering the nightmares of sleeping humans that have bled into the wolf dream. Perrin steps into one such fear dream, finding himself in a terrifying forest of bone-like trees, hunted by a monstrous towering shadow with burning red eyes. As the creature closes in, a frightened woman within the dream reveals its identity. It is her nightmare vision of the dragon reborn. This revelation that the monster is a twisted perception of Rand gives Perrin the intellectual leverage he needs. Realizing it is not real, he rejects its power and the nightmare dissolves around him. Hopper teaches him that accepting the fear is what gives it substance. Suddenly Hopper senses a world-altering event unfolding. He leads Perrin to Dragonmount, where a cataclysmic black storm, a vortex of pure spiritual turmoil, rages around the peak. The wolves of the world are gathering, awaiting what Hopper calls the last hunt, an event whose commencement depends on a choice being made at that very moment. Perrin feels compelled to climb the mountain. At the summit, he witnesses a translucent image of Rand standing at the heart of the storm. Perrin watches in horror as a living darkness, a physical manifestation of evil and despair, seeps from Rand's body, threatening to consume him completely. Just as all hope seems lost, a single, defiant point of light shines from within the black shell. This light explodes outward, shattering the darkness and erupting into a column of pure, cleansing sunlight that banishes the storm. In that moment of profound victory, the wolves begin to howl in triumph. The last hunt has finally begun. Perrin, witnessing his friend's spiritual rebirth, raises his own head and joins their exultant cry. Chapter 31. Into the Void. The chapter opens with Matt Cawthon in a grimy Kemlin tavern called the Rumour Wheel, deliberately making himself a target. He drinks a single cup of wine for courage before entering a dice game where his supernatural luck allows him to win against cheaters despite not knowing the rules. In a calculated and public display, he reveals his identity by removing his scarf to show his neck scar, donning his famous wide-brimmed hat, and unsheathing his ashandaré, all while displaying the fox-head medallion. This act is an open invitation to the golem that has been hunting him. Stepping into the night, Matt becomes the bait in his own carefully laid trap. He walks the dark streets, shadowed by Talmanes and the Band of the Hand, who intercept several groups of common assassins, clearing the way for the true predator. The golem finally appears, its amused arrogance clashing with Matt's grim resolve. Their initial confrontation takes place within a ring of lanterns Matt's men have set. Matt uses the extended reach of his ashandaré, with the medallion tied to its blade, to land a searing blow on the creature, confirming its vulnerability and causing it genuine pain. Driven by a furious need for vengeance for Queen Tylin and his slain men, Matt attacks with a ferocity that surprises the golem. The creature retaliates intelligently by extinguishing the lanterns, attempting to plunge the fight into darkness. The battle escalates when a dropped lantern sets a building ablaze, and Matt is disarmed. At this critical moment, he reveals his trump card, 2 more foxhead medallions, copies created by Elaine. He presses his attack, becoming a whirlwind of steel and searing silver, driving the golem down a burning hallway while shouting battle cries in the old tongue. He forces the creature through a specific doorway, which is revealed to be a skimming gateway leading to an endless black void. With a final kick, Matt sends the golem falling for what he hopes will be an eternity. The aftermath reveals the trap was a coordinated, though nearly botched, effort with the kinswomen. Having finally dealt with his pursuer, Matt, in his typical fashion, negotiates a bounty for his work and prepares to return to his life. Chapter 32. A Storm of Light. The chapter opens in the heart of a dying city. Maradon is consumed by fire and smoke, a situation deliberately orchestrated by General Rodel Iturralde. Realizing the city could not be conventionally defended against the overwhelming shadow-spawn forces, he has transformed it into a vast urban death trap. He and his severely depleted Chaldean forces, now a mere fraction of their original strength, engage in a brutal campaign of guerrilla warfare. They use the labyrinthine streets, the rooftops, and the chaos of the fires to their advantage, executing cunning ambushes against the Trolloc invaders. One such engagement sees them use a decoy of wounded horses to lure a Trolloc phalanx into a trap, where they are annihilated by hidden archers and a cavalry charge with sound-muffled hooves. Despite these tactical victories, Iturralda's situation is desperate. He is physically and mentally exhausted, his command is fractured into small, independent units, and the promised aid has failed to materialize. The Ashaman who were with him have departed, and a scouting mission revealed that the allied last riders, who were supposed to be watching from a nearby ridge, have simply vanished, leaving behind an abandoned camp. The weight of his losses and the hopelessness of his fight are beginning to crush him. The turning point arrives unexpectedly. As Iturralda and his men hide from what they assume is another approaching Trolloc band, they notice the unnervingly uniform rhythm of the footsteps. It is not the chaotic shuffle of beasts, but the disciplined march of a professional army. Stepping into the street, Iturralda is confronted by thousands of soldiers in gleaming silver armor, revealed to be forces sent by the Dragon Reborn under the command of another great Chaldean general, Davram Bashir. The sudden arrival of this relief force after so much solitary struggle and loss completely overwhelms Iturralda. He collapses, overcome by a fit of hysterical laughter and tears, his long-held tension finally breaking. He is escorted to a new command center, where he meets Bashir. The two generals, leaders from nations with a history of rivalry, share a moment of mutual, formal respect. Bashir expresses profound admiration for Iturralda's defense, acknowledging it as a military miracle. They learn that the brave commander Yoeli died defending his post, while the city's cowardly lord, Torquemen, was found locked in his rooms. However, their relief is short-lived. A scout reports a new, even larger Trolloc army descending from the mountains, a force so immense that even their combined armies cannot hope to stop it. The grim conclusion is that Maradon is still lost, and their only option is an immediate and total evacuation. Just as this decision is made, Rand al'Thor appears. He has undergone a profound transformation, his demeanor now imbued with a quiet wisdom and compassion that Iturralda has never seen in him before. He apologizes directly to Iturralda for leaving him and his men to face the darkness alone. Overruling Bashir's pragmatic plan to retreat, Rand declares that the city will not fall, not after the immense sacrifices made to hold it. He then walks through a gateway out onto the battlefield, accompanied by only 2 Aiel maidens, to confront the entire enemy horde by himself. What follows is a cataclysmic display of the one power, a true storm of light. Rand unleashes an apocalyptic symphony of destruction, weaving immense waves of fire, explosive shards of ice, and scything death gates that cut down thousands of shadow spawn at a time. He summons a furious storm with lightning that pulverizes the enemy and tornadoes that lift Trollocs into the air, turning them into deadly projectiles against their own kind. The assault is not just powerful, but also beautiful and terrifying in its precision and scale. Simultaneously, within the command building, a scream is heard from Torquemen's room. The city's lord has been driven completely insane by what he calls a terrible light, an apparent backlash from the sheer purity and intensity of Rand's power. He gouges out his own eyes, his crazed ramblings about the great lord, exposing him as a dark friend who has been broken by the very light he swore to oppose. In the aftermath, Rand returns to the Stone of Tyr, physically and spiritually drained. He explains to Min that his anger in the battle was not the destructive rage of his past, but a righteous fury born from witnessing the suffering of his people, an emotion he now accepts as a necessary part of his fight. He affirms, however, that he cannot win the war alone, and that his generals must lead the armies. The chapter concludes with a final, poignant revelation. Min mentions that Cadsuane has returned with a guest. Rand takes Iturralde to meet her and discovers that she has found King Matin Stepaneos of Arad Doman alive and well, having been held in secret by the White Tower. For Iturralde, it is the return of his sovereign. For Rand, it is a small but deeply significant moment of relief, the knowledge that one innocent man, he believed, he had caused the death of still lives. Chapter 33. The chapter opens in the Amyrlin's study, where Egwene, Siwan, and a newly raised Nynaeve share a meal. The scene is one of deceptive tranquility, with golden light filling the room and the soup being surprisingly good, a small pleasure in trying times. This calm is a prelude to a series of intense discussions that reveal deep-seated tensions and strategic planning. Nynaeve has just provided a detailed report on her time with Rand al'Thor, confirming the cleansing of Saidin. Egwene processes this information with pragmatic leadership, acknowledging that the purified male half of the One Power makes the controversial bonding between Ashaman and Aes Sedai less alarming, though she still expresses her personal distaste for the practice. This conversation quickly exposes Nynaeve's lingering loyalty to Rand, as she defends his perspectives and draws a parallel between his responsibility for the Ashaman and Egwene's own inherited responsibility for the Aes Sedai who had brutalized him. Egwene deftly counters this, asserting her authority and subtly reminding Nynaeve where her allegiance should now lie. Siwan, observing the exchange, internally notes that Nynaeve's tendency to side with Rand is a significant concern. The focus then shifts to the more immediate threat of the mysterious murders plaguing the White Tower. Egwene unveils a high-stakes plan to unmask the killer, who they presume to be the Forsaken Mesaana. Her strategy involves arming a select group of loyal Aes Sedai with Dream Terangreal and luring Mesaana into a trap within the world of dreams. The plan is multifaceted, using decoy meetings with Windfinders and Wise Ones to make the bait irresistible, while the true ambush is set within the physical world in the hall of the tower. Nynaeve vehemently objects to Egwene placing herself in direct peril, but Egwene stands firm. She argues that her unparalleled expertise in Tel'aran'rhiod makes her not just the leader, but the tower's most crucial weapon in this specific fight, a decision reinforced by a prophetic dream foretelling disaster if they fail. Accepting Siwan's suggestion to request aid from Ael Dreamwalkers as a precaution, Egwene ultimately asserts the tower's independence by rejecting any involvement from Rand al'Thor. The perspective then shifts to Perrin, who is actively training within the wolf dream. He plunges into a terrifying nightmare of a blood-soaked ocean filled with monstrous creatures devouring the survivors of a shipwreck. This sequence serves as a brutal training exercise, highlighting his ongoing struggle to impose his will upon the dream world. He consciously fights the nightmare's reality, using a mantra to maintain control, but a moment of wavering fear demonstrates how easily he can be pulled into the illusion. With sheer force of will, Perrin asserts his own reality, transforming the violent sea back into the solid cobblestones of Caerhien and dissipating a monster into mist. His subsequent conversation with the Wolf Hopper reveals his deep-seated impatience and anxiety. Perrin feels he is not learning fast enough to confront his nemesis Slayer. Hopper offers a different perspective, suggesting that Perrin's true training has spanned the entire 2 years he has been entering the dream, not just the recent weeks of focused effort. Undeterred by his own perceived slowness, Perrin resolves to continue his harsh training, driven by the urgency of the approaching last hunt. Finally, the chapter follows Goryn Trakand in the palace gardens of Caemlyn. The setting, a beautifully blooming rose march, stands in stark contrast to Goryn's own internal turmoil. He is consumed by a toxic mix of guilt for his absence during the siege of Caemlyn, resentment towards Rand al'Thor, and a complicated, fractured relationship with Egwene. His sister, Elaine, confronts him with gentle but unyielding perception. She systematically dismantles his justifications for hating Rand, correctly identifying his feelings as rooted in jealousy and a selfish sense of inadequacy. More importantly, she offers him a profound insight into the nature of leadership, explaining that a powerful woman like Egwene doesn't need another man willing to die for her, but rather someone she can trust implicitly to carry out her will. This conversation, combined with Elaine's act of formally releasing him from his duties as first Prince of the Sword, allows Gawain to finally let go of his vendetta against Rand and refocus on his desire to protect Egwene. This newfound resolve is immediately tested. He encounters a group of women, including a former Shonchan Damane, who recognizes the assassin's knife he carries. She identifies it as a blood knife, the weapon of elite Shonchan assassins. Through further questioning of another captive, a former Suldam named Kaizia, Gawain uncovers the terrifying truth. The blood knives are magically enhanced, nearly unstoppable suicide soldiers who are given a short, poisoned lifespan to complete their mission. Their tear angriel allows them to become nearly invisible in shadow, and they conduct smaller test killings before striking at their true target. Gawain realizes with chilling certainty that Egwene is the ultimate target. Just as he resolves to warn her, a messenger arrives with a letter from Tar Valon. The missive from Egwene's keeper is a cold, formal summons demanding his immediate return. In a final, fateful act of wounded pride, Gawain reacts with fury. Instead of returning himself, he sends the blood knife back with the messenger, along with a detailed warning about the Shonchan assassin. His pride prevents him from obeying what he perceives as a command, choosing instead to provide the vital, life-saving information from a distance, a decision that dangerously complicates his duty and his relationship with Egwene. Chapter 34, Judgment. This chapter opens with Perrin Ibarra solidifying his role as a commander, his thoughts consumed not by the impending trial, but by a deeper, more insidious threat. He issues a forceful order for his scouts, including the Aiel maidens, to remain on watch, sensing a wrongness in the air that transcends the immediate conflict with the White Cloaks. This strategic foresight highlights his growing acceptance of his leadership responsibilities, a change noted by the Aiel warrior Gaul. Perrin confirms his suspicions in a conversation with the Ashaman Neild, linking the inability to create gateways near his camp to the strange dome he has witnessed in the Wolf Dream. He concludes that his forces are being deliberately trapped, likely to be attacked by an unknown enemy after they have been weakened by a battle with the Children of the Light. The trial, therefore, becomes less about personal justice and more about strategic survival. Perrin must find a way to avoid a bloody conflict at all costs. Fael's perspective provides a view of the political and social intricacies of the camp. She is actively working to manage perceptions and bolster Perrin's authority, most notably by publicly mending fences with Berelain to quash damaging rumors. Her preparations for the trial are both diplomatic in her choice of attire and supportive demeanor, and practical as she secretes knives on her person and prepares to take command should the worst happen. In a crucial conversation before they depart, Perrin confides in her completely, revealing not only his theory about the trap, but also his disturbing new ability to see visions of Rand al'Thor whenever he thinks of him, feeling a pull that confirms the last hunt is imminent. This moment of shared vulnerability solidifies their partnership, establishing Fael not just as his wife, but as his chief advisor and strategist. The trial itself is a masterful scene of high tension, set within a makeshift pavilion situated between two fully assembled and hostile armies. The atmosphere is thick with the promise of violence. Morgus Trakand presides with an undeniable regal authority, completely transformed from the servant Maegdin. The charges are laid out by Galad Damadred, the murder of 2 White Cloaks and the unsubstantiated accusation of being a dark friend. The proceedings begin with the testimony of Child Bayer, who gives a biased and damning account of the night in question, painting Perrin as a beast-like killer allied with evil wolves. Perrin's defense is a pivotal moment of character development. Instead of denying his actions or making excuses, he chooses to explain the fundamental truth of his nature. The process becomes a fusion of physical craft and magical power, with Neild eventually calling upon a circle of wise ones to provide even greater strength. As Perrin pounds the glowing metal, his internal monologue shifts. He confronts his long-held reluctance to lead. He realizes that to abandon his followers would be the greater failure, as their fate would still be his responsibility. His anger, grief, and despair are channeled into the steel. Forged alongside his burgeoning resolve and acceptance of his destiny, he is not just making a tool, he is making a statement of identity. The end result is a magnificent, oversized warhammer with a steel haft, a weapon of both function and immense symbolic power. In a final cathartic act, he imprints the image of a leaping wolf onto its head, a tribute to Hopper, and names it Mahalainir. This act solidifies his transformation. He stands before his followers, a changed man, and formally accepts their oaths of allegiance. He commands that his wolf-head banner, which he had previously ordered destroyed in a moment of doubt, be found and raised high. He has finally embraced his role not just as Perrin Ibarra the blacksmith, but as Perrin Goldeneyes, the leader his people need him to be. As the army prepares to move through a gateway to the ambush site, Fael and Berylyn have a tense conversation. Berylyn is convinced that Perrin, in his newfound ruthlessness, intends to ambush and annihilate the Whitecloaks to preemptively deal with their commander, Galad Damodred. Fael staunchly defends Perrin's honor, certain he would never betray a promise in such a manner. The conversation also reveals that Berylyn has shifted her political and personal attentions toward Galad, seeing a connection to him as a new path to securing her nation's future. The chapter culminates as Perrin's army assembles on the heights overlooking the unsuspecting Whitecloak camp. The tension is palpable as the Whitecloaks detect their presence and begin to arm themselves. Just as it seems a confrontation is inevitable, Perrin reveals his true, shocking purpose. He is there to save the Whitecloaks, not destroy them. At that very moment, a vast army of Trollocs and Myrddraal materializes from a thick fog in the valley below, having laid their own trap for the Children of the Light. The chapter ends with Perrin raising Mahalainir and giving the command for his archers to open fire on the forces of the Shadow, initiating a battle on his own terms. Chapter 41. An Unexpected Ally. The chapter opens in a state of high tension and misdirection, as Galad and the Children of the Light brace for an imminent attack from Perrin Ibarra's forces. Unnatural globes of light suddenly illuminate the night sky, followed by a terrifying volley of arrows. However, a profound sense of confusion sweeps through the Whitecloak camp when the arrows land harmlessly far beyond their perimeter. The true nature of the threat is revealed moments later by terrified shouts. A massive Trolloc army, thousands strong, is swarming down the main road. The Whitecloaks then witness a shocking spectacle. The Shadow Spawn are not their attackers, but are themselves being systematically slaughtered by Perrin's archers and channelers, who hold a superior defensive position on the high ground above the road. This complete subversion of their expectations throws the Whitecloaks into chaos. While Galad attempts to organize a coherent defense against the monstrous horde, his subordinate Baia immediately interprets the situation through a lens of deep-seated paranoia. He furiously accuses Perrin of orchestrating the entire event, claiming it is a trick to gain favor, just as he supposedly did in the Two Rivers. This highlights the internal division and prejudice within the children, as Bornhald questions the flawed logic of such a scheme. In contrast, the narrative shifts to Perrin, who provides a clear and accurate tactical analysis to Fael. He explains that his army was deliberately herded into this location, which is a massive ambush set by one of the Forsaken. He deduces the Trollocs are appearing via a hidden portal stone, and the Whitecloaks were merely an unforeseen obstacle that the Shadow Spawn are now trying to eliminate before turning their full attention to Perrin's forces. The battle turns disastrously for the Whitecloaks. Despite their training, they are overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, ferocity, and unnatural resilience of the Trollocs. Their cavalry charges become ineffective, their lines begin to break, and they are systematically being boxed in against the hillside. Galad fights bravely on the front lines, but witnesses his men, whom he believed to be paragons of virtue, breaking in terror. His own worldview begins to fracture as he realizes their righteousness offers no divine protection against such a foe. He is eventually unhorsed and suffers a broken ankle, leaving him vulnerable. From his vantage point, Perrin sees that the White Cloaks are on the verge of total annihilation. Despite Galenny's counsel that letting their enemies perish is strategically sound, Perrin makes a crucial moral decision. Declaring that he will not abandon any man to the shadow, he chooses to intervene, ordering a daring and incredibly risky cavalry charge down the steep, treacherous slope to save them. Led by Perrin himself, the charge of 1,000 horsemen crashes into the Trolloc flank, shattering their encirclement and providing a desperately needed reprieve for Galad's beleaguered army. In the chaos, Perrin personally rescues the injured Galad, pulling him onto his own horse. This selfless act of honor forces Galad to see the truth of Perrin's character. In that moment, he delivers his official judgment, sentencing Perrin to a monetary fine for the families of the fallen White Cloaks and the duty to fight in the last battle, a surprisingly merciful verdict. The chapter reaches its climax immediately after, when the hate-consumed buyer attempts to assassinate Perrin from behind. In a shocking and tragic turn, Dane Bornhald, choosing honor over allegiance and friendship, kills Buyer to prevent the dishonorable act. The chapter concludes with a grim understanding forged in blood and battle, as Perrin and Galad, now unexpected allies, turn to face the remaining horde together. Chapter 42. Stronger Than Blood. Gawain finds himself recovering in Egwene's quarters, exhausted but captivated by the new warder bond linking him to her. This connection is a profound revelation, allowing him to perceive the tempest of her emotions swirling beneath the placid surface she presents to the world. Their conversation addresses the night's violent events, including the successful capture of Mizana, who was discovered mentally broken while disguised as a reclusive brown sister. Egwene acknowledges that Gawain's decision to defy orders and guard her door was the very thing that saved her life from a sophisticated assassination attempt. Their discussion turns personal when Gawain impulsively proposes marriage. Though he can feel her love for him through the bond, Egwene is shocked by the impropriety of marrying without first informing her parents and his sister, Elaine. After she departs to face the hall, Gawain inspects the bodies of his slain men and then secretly confiscates the 3 identical, thorny, vine-shaped rings from the dead assassins. Meanwhile, Lan travels onward, growing ever more certain that Nynaeve has taken control of his bond. He is dismayed upon reaching the Silverwall Keeps to discover a massive army of borderlanders, including many Malkieri, flying the Golden Crane, who have gathered to follow him. Believing their quest to reclaim Malkia is a suicide mission, he resolves to pass through the fortress, unrecognized, to spare them from this fate. His plan is thwarted when he is identified by the young princes of Kandor and Arafel. They reveal that Lan's own wife, Nynaeve, anticipated his attempt to evade his followers. She told them where to wait and instructed them to watch for his unmistakable warhorse, Mandab. Outmaneuvered and cornered by his own destiny, Lan finally accepts his role, formally declaring that the Golden Crane flies for Tarmangaidon, and the entire camp erupts in a massive roar. Chapter 43. Some Tea. After a brutal night battle, Galad Damodred and Perrin Aibara surveyed the carnage, debating the Ashermen's claims of freedom from the One Power's taint. Galad questioned their sanity, but Perrin, trusting their battlefield effectiveness, defended their sincerity, noting Galad's evolving trust in him. As dawn broke, they located a severely injured child, Jeremnus, amidst Trolloc bodies. Perrin's keen hearing found him, and his calm voice soothed the delirious youth. Galad, now pragmatic, accepted the necessity of eyes, Sidai healing, acknowledging Jerem's critical state rendered him unable to refuse. Perrin subsequently offered Galad's White Cloaks swift passage to Andor via travelling, contingent on Galad swearing fealty to his command until the last battle concluded. Galad hesitated at the bold request, given Perrin's contentious reputation, but Perrin insisted, highlighting the urgency and Rand's likely severity. Swayed by Perrin's earlier profound compassion for Jerem, Galad reluctantly accepted, feeling a strange exhaustion he attributed to Atavarin's influence, recognizing their convergence as a sign of Perrin's need for him. Meanwhile, Aleandra, Fael, and Berelin made bandages among the casualties. Aleandra observed the strained civility between Fael and Berelin. Fael candidly assessed Berelin's pursuit of Pera as purely strategic, devoid of true affection. Berelin, speaking with Aleandra, reiterated her pragmatic view of marriage as a political calculation, dismissing romance for leaders. This composure shattered when Galad, weary yet strikingly composed, entered. His captivating presence instantly disarmed Berelin, who stumbled over her words, forgetting her earlier pronouncements. Galad's awkward offer of tea led to both he and an entranced Berelin passing their cups to an amused Aleandra. As the two walked off to cut bandages, Aleandra, holding 3 teacups, smiled, anticipating an unexpected yet potentially beneficial alliance and the White Cloak's departure from her lands. She discreetly set aside a fine silk shirt, too elegant for bandages, for a future sash. Chapter 44. A Backhanded Request. The chapter begins with Morgus Trakand observing the deteriorating state of Andor from Perrin's hillside encampment. She notes with sorrow the dying landscape and the influx of people into cities like Whitebridge as farms fail, a grim reflection of the Dark One's growing influence. Within the camp, Morgus feels displaced, no longer a queen, but not merely a commoner, caught in an ambiguous social position. Her relationship with Fael remains strained, a source of personal regret for Morgus. Her internal conflict comes to a head during a tense and formal encounter with Martin Talonvor. He argues pragmatically that she must return to Caemlyn immediately. With news of her survival spreading, her presence is needed to publicly renounce the throne and solidify her daughter Elaine's rule, preventing political instability. Morgus curtly reveals she has already given the order to pack, leading to a moment of misunderstanding. Talonvor, feeling rebuffed, apologizes for his forwardness. The tension breaks when he returns to lay his sword at her feet, reaffirming his unwavering loyalty and love. Moved by his devotion, Morgus finally chooses personal happiness over political expediency, deciding that in these dark times love cannot be sacrificed for duty. Their decision is swiftly acted upon by the ever-practical Lini, who marches the couple to Perrin Aibara. Morgase requests that Perrin, as the de facto lord of the camp, officiate their wedding. In a simple but emotionally resonant ceremony witnessed by Fael, Galad, and a tearful Berelin, Morgus and Talonvor exchange vows. Their words recount their shared history of hardship and mutual respect, with Morgus acknowledging the nobility of his soul and Talonvor praising her unbreakable spirit. Perrin, awkward but sincere, pronounces them married. The narrative then shifts to Perrin's perspective, showcasing his burdens of leadership. He manages his massive, diverse army of nearly 70,000, overseeing the creation of power-wrought weapons and grappling with the unnatural blight killing the surrounding forests. A conversation with Faela reveals her satisfaction that Berelin has shifted her attentions to Galad, with Faela using a cryptic analogy of a hawk and a falcon to hint at her own successful social maneuvering. The chapter concludes with a surprising reunion. While walking alone, Perrin is pelted by acorns and discovers Mac Cawthon hiding playfully behind a tree. Their warm reunion is classic Matt, complete with a prank involving a badger in a sack. However, his light-hearted demeanor quickly turns serious. He warns Perrin that deadly assassins are hunting them and that he must increase his security. Matt then arranges to meet Perrin at an inn in Caemlyn before using an Asherman's gateway to depart, leaving Perrin with a newfound sense of urgency and danger. Chapter 45, A Reunion. The chapter begins with Elaine waking to the lingering echoes of a dream-sent message from Egwene. This message delivers two pieces of monumental news. The Dark Friend Messana has been defeated, and the arrival of Elaine's brother Gawain was instrumental. This news brings Elaine a profound sense of relief, momentarily overshadowing her frustration from the previous night. She smiles, hoping this might signal a reconciliation between Egwene and Gawain. Her good mood is amplified by the powerful, warm sensation she feels through her bond with Rand al'Thor, a connection that seems to have physically broken the oppressive cloud cover over Andor. Her morning routine is soon interrupted by her midwife, Melfane. The interaction highlights the careful game Elaine must play, projecting cheerfulness to avoid being confined to bed rest again. The scene culminates in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy for Elaine. After weeks of stubborn disbelief, Melfane finally confirms that she can hear two distinct heartbeats, validating Elaine's certainty that she is carrying twins. The focus then shifts to politics as Elaine meets with Master Nori and Dialin. The central topic is the precarious situation in Caerhien. Dialin astutely points out the immense difficulty of taking the Sun Throne without making it seem like an Andoran conquest, warning that the proud Caerhienin nobility will never accept a subordinate position. This concern is validated by Master Nori's intelligence reports. He reveals that insidious rumors are already spreading, painting Elaine as a foreign conqueror who will strip Caerhienin nobles of their titles and relegate their people to second-class citizens. Together they deduce that the source of these rumors is likely a cunning noble who has maintained a neutral stance, positioning themselves to seize power by appearing as a patriot after Elaine's presumed failure. The political meeting is dramatically cut short by the arrival of two hooded figures brought in by Birgitte. The first reveal is Elaine's half-brother Galad, whose presence is a warm, if formal, surprise. But the second reveal is a political earthquake. The person with him is their mother, Morgase Trekand, alive and returned from the dead. The tension in the room is palpable until Morgase formally curtsies and acknowledges Elaine as queen, confirming she has renounced her claim to the throne. The revelations continue as Galad announces his new station as the Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Light. Once they are alone, Elaine and Morgase share a genuinely tender mother-daughter reunion. Elaine reveals that Rand is the father of her children, a fact Morgase accepts with visible difficulty. They quickly strategize, deciding Morgase's return must be handled with care. Elaine proposes giving her an important but distant post, administering the tumultuous western region of Andor, including the Two Rivers, a plan Morgase agrees to. The chapter's final section shifts perspective entirely, following Aviendha as she sits in contemplation before the city of Ruidaean. She reflects on how Rand has fundamentally broken the city's ancient purpose by removing its mists, bringing it water, and revealing the Aiel's secret history to the world. Her thoughts are a deep meditation on the future of her people, recognizing that old traditions cannot be followed blindly and that strength requires new purpose. Troubled by her own uncertain future as one of Rand's partners, she resolves to enter the glass columns the next day, seeking not the past, but wisdom for the future. Chapter 46, Working Leather. The chapter begins with Androl Genhal deeply engrossed in his craft, meticulously shaping and stitching a leather arm guard. This opening act serves as a window into his core philosophy. For Androl, the quality of a thing lies in its smallest components. He believes that if each individual stitch is perfect, the entire piece will be strong and reliable. This careful, methodical act of creation stands in stark contrast to the destructive purpose for which he is being trained as an Ashaman. It is a tranquil moment of building something in a life increasingly defined by the potential to tear things down, providing him with a sense of peace and purpose that his new reality often lacks. This tranquility is disrupted by a minor annoyance that highlights a major problem. His high-quality shears have been borrowed, a common occurrence in the Black Tower, despite its supposedly strict rules. This casual theft, likely by one of Tame's favoured men, underscores the breakdown of order and the pervasive cronyism under the M. Hale's leadership. Forced to use the one power to complete his task, Androl reflects on his own strange place within the Ashaman hierarchy. He is acutely aware that he is the weakest of all the dedicated in terms of raw strength. However, his weakness is balanced by an extraordinary and rare talent for weaving gateways. It was this specific, incredible skill that led Loghain to champion his promotion, overriding Time's objections and solidifying the political tensions that now divide the tower. Leaving his workshop, Androl walks through the developing settlement of the Black Tower, a place of immense change and strange contradictions. He sees soldiers using the one power to dig a massive canal, reshaping the earth with raw force, and then witnesses children playing joyfully in the very trenches created by those blasts of Siden. This sight prompts him to contemplate the world's shifting perception of male channelers, a fear that once terrified him as a child, now becoming a casual part of daily life for a new generation. His observations are cut short by a terrifying internal struggle. While demonstrating a weave to a group of young recruits from the Two Rivers, he holds the power for a moment too long. This triggers a deeply disturbing phenomenon where he perceives shadows detaching from their objects and creeping toward him with malevolent intent. He is forced to release Saidin immediately, leaving him to grapple with a horrifying uncertainty. Is he suffering from a unique form of madness born from the long-cleansed taint, or is he being actively hunted by a tangible darkness that only he can see? The growing schism within the Black Tower becomes undeniable when Androl reaches the practice fields. There, the channelers are physically separated into two groups. On one side are Androl's friends and those loyal to Loghain, practicing with diligence and skill. On the other are Time's sycophants, led by the lounging Koterin, whose weaves are wilder, more destructive, and accompanied by arrogant laughter. The friendly banter between Androl and his companions is interrupted when Koterin decides to bully Androl, derisively calling him page boy for his gateway-making talent and forcing him to perform a feat of power far beyond his capabilities to humiliate him. Androl's friends, enraged by the spectacle, seize the source to defend him, bringing the two factions to the brink of open conflict. Displaying a calm pragmatism that belies his supposed weakness, Androl de-escalates the confrontation, recognizing that they would be utterly destroyed in a direct fight against Time's more numerous and powerful followers. In the wake of this tense encounter, the simmering discontent among Androl's friends boils over. They discuss their growing fears, the suspiciously rapid advancement of men who take Time's private lessons, the constant stream of rumors undermining the Lord Dragon, and the prolonged worrying absence of their leader, Loghain. Their frustration hardens into a quiet resolve. They agree that something is deeply wrong within the Black Tower and decide to begin a covert investigation to find proof of Time's treachery. In the chapter's closing moments, the group turns to Androl for direction. Despite his weakness in the power and his own private demons, his wisdom and steady hand have made him their unlikely leader, setting them on a dangerous path against the Mahale himself. Chapter 47. A Chamber of Instruction. The chapter opens with Fael and Perrin arriving on the outskirts of Camelin via a gateway. Fael struggles to contain her deep-seated nervousness as she prepares to face Queen Elaine. Their procession has been meticulously orchestrated to project an image of strength without outright aggression, consisting of Alyandra's guards, Two Rivers longbowmen, Perrin's own wolf guard, and the ever-present Aiel. As they approach the sprawling city, they observe not only its chaotic growth and the numerous military encampments surrounding it, but also a bizarre and unnatural circular clearing in the clouds directly overhead. Upon being granted an audience, they are led into the royal palace. Fael notes that little has changed since Rand al'Thor held court there, though his dragon throne has been replaced by Andor's traditional lion throne. The initial greeting from Queen Elaine is formal and laden with tension. She publicly thanks them for the return of her mother, Morgus, but strategically withholds any noble title from Perrin, immediately establishing the contentious nature of his status. Sensing the futility of negotiating in a public forum, Fail requests a private meeting, which Elaine grants. In a smaller sitting room, the diplomatic pretenses are immediately dropped. Elaine begins with a stunningly aggressive gambit, asking why she should refrain from executing them both for treason. This power play sets the tone for a tense negotiation. Perrin's initial defense, invoking Rand's name, is swiftly dismissed by Elaine, who asserts her own sovereignty. The debate then shifts to the core of the conflict. Elaine views Perrin's actions, raising the banner of ancient Manetherin and his people's refusal to pay taxes, as open rebellion. Fail and Perrin counter this accusation by arguing that their actions were a necessary response to generations of neglect from the crown, which had left the Two Rivers to fend for itself against even existential threats, like Trolloc invasions. The stalemate is broken by the crucial intervention of Morgus. Fulfilling a promise she made to Perrin and Fail, she counsels her daughter with a potent warning against attempting to fight a Tavaren, comparing it to trying to move a mountain with a spoon. She vouches for Perrin's character and his lack of ambition for the Andorran throne, effectively shifting the emotional and political landscape of the room. Seizing this opening, Fail masterfully reframes their entire purpose. Instead of making demands, she presents an offer. She proposes that Perrin be officially recognized as the High Lord of the Two Rivers, with his lands exempt from taxes. More importantly, she broadens the scope of the deal, illustrating how accepting Perrin into the fold would forge a powerful new coalition of 5 nations: Andor, the Two Rivers, Gialdan, Saldea, and potentially Mayenne, with Elaine at its head. This transforms Perrin from a provincial rebel into the cornerstone of a new grand alliance, an offer that appeals directly to Elaine's ambitions. The final brilliant piece of the puzzle is suggested by Morgus, to grant the Two Rivers to the Dragon Reborn as his official seat within Andor, appointing Perrin and his line as its hereditary stewards. This provides Elaine with the perfect political cover, allowing her to grant all of their terms not as a concession to a rebel, but as an honor bestowed upon Rand al'Thor. The deal is struck, and as the meeting concludes, Elaine reveals unsettling news. Rand intends to break the remaining seals on the Dark One's prison, a plan that the new Amirlin, Egwene Alvere, is gathering forces to prevent. The perspective then shifts dramatically to the Shonchan Empire and its ruler, Fortuona, the daughter of the 9 Moons. In a stark, windowless chamber used for breaking the wills of captive channelers, Fortuona holds court, her authority symbolized by her magnificent, omen-laden attire. It is revealed that the Shonchan have captured the former Amirlin seat. Despite the woman's desperate attempts to bargain for her freedom, she is brutally compelled by her handler to demonstrate her abilities. She slices the air open, creating a gateway, a power the Shonchan have heard of but never witnessed firsthand. The revelation of traveling stuns the imperial court. They immediately recognize its world-altering military implications. Fortuona, seeing this as a sign and a supreme opportunity, makes a bold and immediate proclamation. She orders the Captain General to gather every domain in their possession, train them all in the art of traveling, and prepare for a massive, decisive surprise assault on the White Tower itself. Her goal is absolute, to leash every last Aes Sedai and cement the Empire's power. In the chapter's final section, the scene moves to a quiet inn-room in Kemlin, where Perrin has reunited with Matt Cawthon and Tom Merrilin. The 3 friends share a moment of relaxed camaraderie, smoking their pipes and catching up on their extraordinary separate journeys. The light-hearted atmosphere soon turns serious, however, as Tom warns both Perrin and Matt that their growing fame has made them conspicuous and vulnerable targets. He advises Perrin to use his Ashaman's ability to travel as a means of deception to protect himself from assassins, a suggestion Perrin readily accepts and even improves upon. The true reason for their meeting is then revealed. Matt announces that Moiraine Damodred is not dead. He explains that she is alive but held captive within the mysterious tower of Genjay. He is determined to mount a rescue mission, but explains that according to a letter from Moiraine herself, he can only be accompanied by 2 other people whose identities are already known to him. The chapter concludes as Mat prepares to tell Perrin the full, unbelievable story of his perilous quest to come. Chapter 48. The chapter opens as Aviendha completes her initial journey through the glass pillars of Ruidaean. She stands in the central plaza, observing the miraculously healed tree of life, Avendesora, which flourishes in stark contrast to the dying world around it. She reflects on the purpose of the pillars, concluding that their original function as a test of a leader's ability to accept the Aiel's secret past is now obsolete. Since Randall Thor revealed that history to all the clans, the trial has lost its power, becoming a tradition devoid of its original meaning. Driven by a desire for deeper understanding and her own recently discovered talent, Aviendha decides to analyze one of the pillars by touching it. Her talent allows her to discern the purpose of ter'angreal, and she hopes to learn the true origin of the columns. The moment her fingers make contact, she is overwhelmed by an immense and incomprehensible power, sensing a vast, almost living consciousness within the ter'angreal that is far beyond her ability to grasp. This act fundamentally alters her experience. Instead of leaving the plaza, her next step plunges her into a terrifyingly vivid vision. She becomes Melidra, a young woman in a desolate future, living a scavenger's existence. Her people, known only as the Folk, are broken and without honor, stealing scraps from technologically advanced outsiders they call Lightmakers. The vision culminates in Melidra's brutal death for trying to steal discarded food, with her killer contemptuously identifying her as an Aiel. Returning to her own body in Ruidaean, Aviendha is sickened and horrified by the vision of a future where her people have lost all traces of Gieto. Confused but resolute, she realizes that ter'angreal has shown her something new and vital. Believing there is more she must learn, she defies Aiel law and tradition by deliberately re-entering the forest of glass columns for a second time. Her subsequent steps thrust her into more visions, each one a generation or 2 closer to her own time, but still in the future. She lives through the eyes of Norlesh, a starving mother whose infant dies of malnutrition after she is denied trade by outsiders serving a raven empress. Then she becomes Tava, a young girl who witnesses the violent destruction of her community by warriors riding monstrous flying beasts. In each vision, she experiences the progressive decay of the Aiel people, their loss of knowledge, their inability to fight or survive, and the complete collapse of their society. The final devastating realization strikes Aviendha as she processes the imagery of the last vision. She recognizes the attackers as Shonchan, their mounts as Rakan, and the Raven Empress as their leader. With chilling certainty, she understands she is not viewing the ancient past. The ter'angreal is showing her a potential, catastrophic future for the Aiel, and it is presenting this future to her in reverse chronological order, starting from the end and moving backward toward the present day. Chapter 49. Court of the Sun. This chapter plunges Aviendha into a series of harrowing visions of her people's future, each revealing a successive stage in the decay and eventual destruction of the Aiel. The first vision places her in the mind of Lad Alin, an elderly wise one of the Tardad. Decades have passed, and the Aiel have been comprehensively defeated in a long and brutal war against the Shonchan. Lad Alin sits in a sparse tent with the last 4 members of what was once the Council of 22, their people pushed back to the mountains, broken and decimated. She laments her inability to channel, believing it could have saved more lives, and reflects on a lifetime that has known nothing but conflict and retreat. Aiel culture has been warped by the endless war. The concept of Gaishain is gone, replaced by a new definition, meaning someone without honor, and their society is a militarized shell of its former self. The news of the White Tower's fall signals the final extinguishment of hope, solidifying the Shonchan conquest of the wetlands. The council concludes that their only option is to retreat into the threefold land, effectively accepting their defeat and irrelevance. The dragon, Rand al'Thor, is remembered with a degree of bitterness as a figure who abandoned them to this fate. The second vision fast-forwards Aviendha into the consciousness of Onkala, a maiden of the spear and, disturbingly, her own descendant. In this era, the Aiel are locked in a 40-year stalemate with the Shonchan, serving as an unwilling shield for the Wetlander nations who have remained neutral. Filled with arrogance and a deep resentment for the people they protect, Onkala and her clan chief, Hehial, travel to Caemlyn. Their mission is to manipulate Andor into joining the war. They present Queen Talana with Shonchan documents detailing plans to invade Andor and assassinate its queen. However, this is a calculated deception. They deliberately withhold a crucial document which clarifies that these are merely contingency plans, not active plots. This act of profound dishonor is justified as a necessary step to win the war. Onkala dreams not just of victory, but of a new, Aiel-led dragon empire rising from the ashes, believing her lineage grants her the right to rule. The vision ends with Aviendha's horrified realization that this woman, who has so thoroughly corrupted the concept of Aiel honor, is a product of her own bloodline. The third and final vision reveals the origin of this tragic downfall. Aviendha becomes Padra, one of her own quadruplet children with Rand, 17 years after the last battle. In this time of peace, the Aiel are encamped in the wetlands, prosperous but culturally adrift. Without war or purpose, the warrior societies have grown restless. The Aiel were never signatories to the Dragon's Peace, and they deeply resent the Shonchan for continuing to hold Aiel channelers captive. Padra and her siblings, revered for their parentage and immense power, become the catalyst for conflict. During a council of all the clan chiefs, they argue that the Aiel must find a new purpose, and that war against the Shonchan is the only path. Their influence proves decisive, and the chiefs agree to prepare for a war that they believe is their right to wage. This decision, made to prevent cultural stagnation, is the first step on the path to the ruin Aviendha has witnessed. After the visions cease, Aviendha is left shattered in the center of the now dark glass columns. She understands with chilling clarity that this terrible future is not a mere possibility, but a direct and logical progression stemming from a single, fateful choice made by her own children. Each step towards destruction was taken with what seemed like sound reasoning at the time, transforming a proud people into a wretched remnant. Overwhelmed by what her lineage is destined to cause, her despair hardens into resolve. Accepting the immense weight of her duty as a wise one, she determines that she cannot allow this future to pass. She will find a way to save her people from themselves. Chapter 50. Choosing Enemies. This chapter details Queen Elaine Trakan's masterful political maneuver to secure her claim to the throne of Caerhien. The narrative opens with Elaine projecting an image of regal authority from the Lion Throne of Andor, deliberately staging a grand political display while internally battling her own nerves. The tension is amplified by the distant booming of her new weapons, the dragons, a demonstration arranged specifically for a delegation of Caerhienin nobles. Her first act is to bring forth her defeated rivals, Arimilla, Elenia, and Naean. In a move calculated for maximum political shock, Elaine does not execute them but instead announces a far more devastating punishment. She strips their entire houses of all titles and lands, declaring their estates forfeit to the crown. This is a terrifying and audacious proclamation, one that risks uniting the rest of the nobility against her, but it serves a crucial purpose by creating a pool of highly desirable, unattached lands for her to leverage. Immediately following this decree, the Caerhienin nobles, led by the ambitious Lorstrom and Bertom, are ushered in. Fresh from witnessing Andor's military might, they are confronted with this display of absolute power. Elaine then executes her brilliant gambit. She offers these newly acquired Andoran estates to the Caerhienin lords, framing it as a way to forge a deeper alliance. This act directly counters their greatest fear, that an Andoran queen would impoverish their own nobility. By making them landowners in Andor, she transforms her bid for their throne from a conquest into a mutually beneficial partnership. The true genius of her strategy is revealed in a private discussion afterward. Elaine explains that she knowingly dangled an even greater prize before Lorstrom and Bertome. By creating a unified throne, she gave them a new, ultimate ambition, the possibility of one day ruling both nations themselves. She has intentionally chosen her future enemies, limiting the competition to two powerful men whom she can now play against each other. For the present, their own ambition compels them to become her staunchest allies, eager to hand her the Sun Throne to set their own long-term plans in motion. Chapter 51. A Testing. The chapter commences with Min holding the crystalline sword, Kalandor, a weapon of legend she has only known through childhood tales. A profound sense of unease washes over her as she grips the blade, which feels impossibly light and unnervingly alive, its inner light shifting on its own. While in the presence of Rand, Cadsuane, and others within the Stone of Tyr, Min experiences a disturbing vision. She sees Kalandor being wielded by a hand made of black onyx. This vision deeply troubles her, reinforcing her own research that suggests the sword possesses a dangerous, undiscovered flaw that could be used against Rand. Despite the warning and Cadsuane's sharp disapproval, Rand calmly takes the powerful Cyangriel and sheathes it on his back, a symbolic act of carrying the future alongside the ancient dragon-marked sword of his past. Before departing to meet the Borderlander armies, Rand demonstrates his evolving leadership. He dispatches the Ashaman Naef on a secret mission to the Black Tower, instructing him to deliver a message of unity and humanity, telling those loyal to Loghain that they are men, not weapons. This marks a significant departure from his previous, harder self. A pivotal shift in power dynamics occurs when Rand directly confronts Cadsuane about her habit of calling him boy. He calmly asserts that his memories as Luz Therin make him over 400 years old, rendering her his junior by several decades. This revelation, delivered with quiet authority, stuns the normally unflappable eyes Sedai into silence, fundamentally altering their relationship. During the ride to the meeting point, Rand explains his new state of being to a worried Min. He reassures her that he has not been replaced by Luz Therin, but has instead integrated the memories of his past life, becoming a more complete version of himself. He credits his humble upbringing and his friends for giving him the strength to withstand the Dark One's influence, a strength the arrogant Luz Therin lacked. Upon reaching the waiting monarchs of the Borderlands, Rand faces an immediate and shocking ordeal. Without a word of greeting, Queen Etheniel, King Isar, Queen Tenobia, and King Paytar each step forward and strike him across the face. Rand endures the 4 blows with immense restraint, refusing to retaliate and calmly holding his guards and the Ale Maiden's back. This display of control is the first part of a hidden test. The true test comes from King Paytar, who asks an impossible question: how did a woman named Telendal Tiraso die? Drawing upon Luz Therin's memories, Rand correctly identifies her as a clerk killed during an attack by Demandred in the Age of Legends. His correct answer resolves the tension, and the monarchs reveal a secret prophecy that commanded them to test the Dragon Reborn's character and knowledge. Had he failed, they were instructed to kill him to prevent a corrupted dragon from destroying the world. In the ensuing discussion, Rand seizes control of the situation. He reveals how close they came to disaster and then issues a powerful ultimatum. He announces his intention to go to Shaiol Ghul to break the remaining seals on the Dark One's prison. He gives the Borderlanders a choice: swear fealty to him and join the last battle, or remain behind while their unprotected lands are consumed by the Shadow. In a final display of his changed nature, he concludes not with a threat, but with a humble request to speak to a common soldier named Hurin, to whom he wishes to apologize. This masterful blend of absolute power and profound humility effectively secures him the allegiance of the world's most elite fighting force. Chapter 52, Boots. The chapter begins with Elaine Trakand preparing to enter Caerhien to claim its throne. Mounted on a magnificent Saldean mare named Glimmer, she is accompanied by her warder, Birgitta Silverbow, who expresses deep misgivings about the venture, viewing Elaine's actions as increasingly reckless. Elaine, however, is resolute, understanding the political necessity of her bold move. She is leading a deliberately small honor guard to avoid appearing as a conqueror, a calculated risk to secure her claim. Her thoughts are also on Rand, whose turbulent yet peaceful emotions she can feel through their bond, confirming his own preparations for a momentous event. After traveling through a gateway woven by one of the kinswomen accompanying her, Elaine's small Andorran force is met by a massive Caerhienin army commanded by Lords Lorstrom and Bertome. The procession into the city itself is a tense affair, but the reception from the common people is unexpectedly warm. Elaine astutely analyzes that the city is not hostile but rather wounded and desperate for stable leadership after years of turmoil. This insight bolsters her confidence as she rides toward the Sun Palace. Upon arrival, she is formally greeted and Rand's authority over the nation is publicly ceded to her. The climax of this political theatre occurs in the Grand Hall of the Sun. As Elaine moves to sit on the throne, Birgitta's sharp eyes and instincts intervene. She discovers a poisoned needle hidden in the cushion, a clear assassination attempt. In a masterful display of political maneuvering, Lord Lorstrom saves face by proclaiming the trap was meant for the Dragon Reborn, a ruse Elaine accepts, placing him in her debt. Birgitta then unceremoniously tests the throne's safety by sitting in it herself, shocking the assembled nobility. Finally seated, Elaine wastes no time asserting her new authority, immediately commanding the Caerhienin armies to prepare to march to the field of Merilor and ordering a general conscription, decisively seizing control and leaving the nobles no time to plot against her. The perspective then shifts to Matt Cawthon, relaxing in his military camp. He reflects on the simple comforts of a soldier's life, a stark contrast to the high-stakes politics Elaine navigates. While sorting through various reports, he has a thoughtful conversation with Setale Annan. The discussion reveals surprising depth in Matt's character as he explains his aversion to nobility through a detailed analogy he calls the philosophy of boots. He argues that an average man's life is simple, like owning 3 pairs of boots for distinct purposes, whereas a nobleman's life is overwhelmingly complicated, like owning 40 pairs for every conceivable occasion. He insists it is not a metaphor, but a literal preference for simplicity over the burdens of leadership. The chapter concludes with Matt solidifying his resolve to never open the mysterious letter from Verin and preparing to depart with Tom and Noel on their perilous quest to the Tower of Genje. Chapter 53. The chapter opens with Pevara's disquieting walk through the Black Tower village alongside Havindra and Mazrim Time. She observes the ceaseless activity, soldiers felling trees, Ashaman using channeled air to slice logs and the pervasive sawdust. A chilling realization dawns on her that these powerful channelers are the source of the everyday labor, a stark contrast to her previous assumptions about the place. Time, exuding a predatory confidence, points out the developing fortifications, boasting of an impregnable stronghold with Ashaman manning guard posts. Yavindra attempts to redirect the conversation to selecting men with the dragon pin, but Time dismisses her with a fierce, almost smiling refusal, insisting only on soldiers and dedicated. He subtly reveals an unnerving awareness of White Tower internal politics, even mentioning other eyes, Sedai outside his gates seeking to bond his men. Pevara, sensing a growing entrapment, proposes they bond only a few, dedicated and return, but Time counters with a dismissive fable about a skyfisher's greed, then casually informs them that movement in and out of the now secure Black Tower will require his explicit permission. Pevara also observes the brutal treatment of the Ashaman, beaten and denied healing, while Sedai are treated with mocking deference. Later, Pevara expresses her deep unease to Yavindra, advocating for immediate departure. However, Javindra, who initially opposed the mission, now surprisingly wants to remain, believing time will eventually yield on allowing them to bond full Ashaman. Pavara grows exasperated, realizing their perceived freedom is gone. Javindra remains unconcerned, confident in their hidden ability to travel. Pavara, struggling with Javindra's defiance, decides to gather the other eyes, Sedai, particularly Tana, to collectively persuade Javindra. To her horror, Tana, who agreed to leave the previous night, also declares her intention to stay, citing learning opportunities and the rebel eyes, Sedai. Tana's cold, unnatural demeanor sends shivers down Pavara's spine. Pavara attempts to weave a gateway, only to discover the power has been blocked for them, confirming her gravest fear. They are all trapped. The narrative then shifts to Perrin's camp, where he bids farewell to Matt, Tom, and Noel, who are setting out to rescue Moiraine. Matt, ever confident in his luck, assures Perrin he can handle the mission, which requires precisely 3 participants. Tom jokingly calls Matt the Prince of the Ravens during their banter, before Grady opens a gateway to a riverbank, the closest safe point to their destination. Perrin offers a silent prayer for their success. Perrin then feels a phantom ache from an old wound as Fael approaches, having deliberately missed Matt's departure due to his bad influence. Perrin, with his forces now ready, leads them through a massive gateway to the field of Merilor. He explains his decision to Fael, asserting his trust in Rand and his belief that the old seals must be broken for new ones, comparing it to forging a new sword from fresh steel rather than patching an old, ruined one. They arrive to a vast convergence of armies from Tyr, Ilion, Kerhien, and Aiel, a stark visual of the last battle's imminent arrival. Perrin addresses his troops, announcing they have found allies and are marching forward. He then delegates logistical tasks to Aravine, instructing her to maintain strict separation from other armies and locals. He observes the disciplined White Cloaks with Galad and Berelin, and the Maena Winged Guard, all prepared for battle. Aliandra, Queen of Andor, acknowledges Perrin's growing leadership, and he gruffly asserts his intention to lead in his own way, even if it means walking instead of riding. Jory Congar and other 2 Rivers men approach to apologize for past rumors, a testament to Faele's influence. As Perrin steps through the gateway, he feels the last battle beginning. Matt, Tom, and Noel approach the mysterious Tower of Genjay, a metallic spire that feels unnaturally silent. Tom uses a bronze knife to draw a triangular symbol, causing a small, dark opening to appear in the tower's seamless surface. Realizing this is an entry point, they redraw a larger triangle, creating a triangular corridor of solid steel leading into darkness. Noel recites a protective chant, and Matt adds his own defiant declaration before they step through, met by a blinding white flash. Inside, they find themselves in a black, irregularly shaped room with 4 corridors, glowing white steam vents, and reflective, scale-like walls. Matt notes it's unlike his previous visits to the Elfin or Ilfin realms. He warns Tom and Noel that the creatures can appear suddenly. Noel tests their exit, stepping back through the triangular opening, only to find himself sealed out, requiring a new drawing to re-enter, confirming the place's unpredictable nature. Tom observes the steam actively recoiling from his torch, a physical manifestation of the realm's illogic. They navigate repetitive, identical chambers where Noel attempts to map their progress. Matt, feeling watched, senses movement and realizes they are indeed being observed. After traversing several more identical rooms, Matt insists on retracing their steps to find the entrance, only to discover it has vanished. Faint, malicious laughter echoes. Tom recounts the tale of Elmiara, trapped in a maze for 100 days, dying near her goal, solidifying Matt's fear of being permanently lost. Suddenly an Ilfin appears, accusing them of breaking a non-existent bargain and demanding their iron, music and fire in exchange for guidance. Matt refuses, suspicious of the creature's hypnotic voice. He instructs Tom to play his flute, the familiar tune, clearing Matt's mind of the eelfin's influence. Matt confronts the eelfin, demanding Moiraine and safe passage, and when it refuses, he begins to sing along with Tom, causing the eelfin to yawn and fall asleep. Noel expresses surprise at Matt's proficiency in the old tongue, which Matt himself didn't consciously realize he was speaking. With the eelfin asleep, they still lack a guide. Matt, recalling his past, realizes his previous wishes to the eelfin had been twisted. He produces his ivory dice, declaring his indifference to odds. He devises a system for navigating the four-way intersections. Rolls of 1, 2, or 3 mean straight, 4, 5, or 6 mean right, and so on. Despite Noel's protests about the unequal probabilities, Matt rolls a 1, demonstrating his unique luck. They proceed straight. At the next intersection, Matt rolls a 9, forcing them back the way they came, and the eelfin is gone. He rolls another 9, compelling them to return again, asserting that the realm operates by consistent, albeit illogical, rules. After another long, disorienting run, they burst into a new chamber, enormous and white, with black columns and upward-flowing steam. Matt recognizes it, declaring they are back on track, and Moiraine will be beyond this point. Chapter 54. The world's waning radiancy. Matt, Tom, and Noel found themselves deep within the eerie, star-shaped chamber of the eelfin domain. Tom's torchlight revealed immense black star-shaped pillars adorned with glowing yellow lines bathing the room in an unhealthy, jaundiced glow. Matt was reacquainted with the pervasive, musty staleness, now coupled with a disturbing, musky scent, unmistakably that of a predator's lair. 5 corridors branched from the chamber, one at each inner point of the star, raising Matt's suspicion that something was amiss compared to his previous visit. Tom mused about the column's height, while Matt, grip tightening on his Ashandarei, reflected on the eelfin's unknown power capabilities. A rustling heralded the eelfin's unseen presence in the encroaching gloom. Matt, wary, suggested Tom resume playing his flute, the lonely melody echoing through the vast space. Noel then drew their attention to a melted black lump on the floor, which Matt grimly identified as the red stone doorway he had previously used, confirming their return to the entry point and the lack of an easy exit. Matt resolved to bargain his way out, confident in his ability to win such contests and convinced the eelfin had anticipated his return, knowing he would survive his prior hanging. A male eelfin materialized, offering passage for a price, its voice coarse. Matt, remembering past deceits, refused to discard his weapons, even igniting an additional torch. The creature recoiled, snarling, displeased by Matt's antagonism. More eelfin emerged, including a female with a crimson crest and others wielding wicked bronze knives, their numbers growing, their eyes reflecting the torchlight. Matt defiantly declared he would only bargain in the Chamber of Bonds, the only place where agreements were binding. Tom's music and Noel's cymbals attempted to hold the shadowy horde at bay. The eelfin began their torment, whispering threats and boasting of ancient wisdom. They attempted to snatch Matt's dice, but Tom's iron dagger struck one, revealing their vulnerability to the metal and the horrifying, steaming faces that formed in their dark blood. Noel insightfully pointed out the eelfin's mastery over the shadows and the deceptive nature of the yellow lights. Realizing the music was failing, Matt chose a desperate tactic, igniting a blinding night flower. As its concussive flash erupted, disorienting the screaming eelfin, Matt spun blindly and, guided by his uncanny luck, plunged into a newly revealed corridor. They sped through the 5-sided passage, which, surprisingly, had no side rooms, just as Matt had mentally demanded. The lack of dust and the confusing flow of time hinted at the realm's manipulative nature. At last, an intricately carved 5-sided doorway shimmered into existence before them. Matt, detecting a potent concentration of eelfin odor, stepped through into the grand, star-shaped Chamber of Bonds exactly as he remembered it. 8 points, 8 empty pedestals, and a single entrance. However, a new element awaited them. Moiraine, suspended in the room's center, shrouded in a fine, luminous mist, her eyes closed. Matt experienced a maelstrom of emotions: worry, frustration, awe, and a strange gratitude for her selflessness. He tried to free her, but the mist burned him fiercely. Tom, undeterred by the pain, heroically braved the mist, pulling Moiraine, frail but alive, into his arms. He carefully removed an ivory angreal bracelet from her wrist. Suddenly, 8 eelfin, 4 males and 4 females clad in unsettling white, occupied the pedestals. Matt, warning his companions to be cautious with their words lest they accidentally bargain their lives away, formally announced their presence in the Chamber of Bonds, emphasizing its binding nature. The eelfin confirmed a prearranged bargain and began to feed on their emotions. Matt, enraged, demanded the exit be restored, kept open and direct, with no further attacks, specifically from the foxes, the eelfin. He also demanded they take Moiraine and depart. The elfin, sensing his desperation, acknowledged the expensive demands, confirming that the price has been set. Matt, recalling a prophecy from his earlier encounter with the elfin about sacrificing half the light of the world to save it, understood the gravity of the moment. He grimly accepted, proclaiming, "I'll pay it, half the light of the world." The elfin assented with a chilling "done" and swarmed him, forming a tightening circle. Ignoring Tom and Noel's cries, Matt accepted his fate. One eelfin male, eyes glinting with lust, lunged, violently tearing out Matt's left eye from its socket. Matt screamed in unimaginable agony, feeling his mind and soul assaulted. The eelfin savored his torment, exclaiming over the savor and the taste of fate. Matt, despite the excruciating pain, defiantly clenched his jaw, retrieving his hat and a chandelier. Tom expressed bitter guilt, but Matt insisted it was his destiny. As they departed, Noel, observing the dazed eelfin, proposed killing them. Matt refused, citing the binding bargain. However, Noel then made a crucial observation. Matt had only specified foxes, eelfin, in his bargain. As they hurried through the straight corridor, tall, graceful figures with vertical slit pupils, armed with bronze swords, the elfin, materialized in the distance. Realizing the loophole, Matt screamed, "Run!" Chapter 55. The One Left Behind. The chapter plunges readers into the frantic and explosive flight of Matt, Thorn, and Noel, trapped within the twisting, repetitive, and rumbling passages of the Aelfin realm. Matt, utilizing his dwindling supply of explosive night flowers and cylinders, desperately fights off the aggressive, slithering creatures pursuing them. As their resources diminish, Thorn, physically spent from carrying Moiraine, and Matt, unable to reliably invoke his luck, without pointing directly at their relentless pursuers, find themselves growing increasingly desperate. In a profound act of self-sacrifice, Noel volunteers to create a diversion. He takes Matt's remaining night flowers and backpack, intending to hold a narrow corridor, buying precious time for Matt and Thorn to escape. Despite fervent protests from both Matt and Thorn, Noel asserts his grim determination, emphasizing that Matt's unique fortune is their only hope for an exit, and Thorn is too weak to engage in combat. Matt, grappling with the stark reality of Noel's impending grim fate, offers a somber acceptance. Before their parting, Noel, now revealed to be the legendary Jane Farstrider, makes a final request: that Matt convey the message of his honorable death should he ever encounter a Malkieri. Noel then turns to face the Aelfin, unleashing a defiant battle cry as Matt and a weeping Thorn make their escape through a newly chosen doorway. Matt, reflecting on Noel's noble act, begins to truly understand and value the concept of honor. After another attempt to guide their path with Matt's luck, they find themselves not in the chamber where Noel made his stand, but in a distinct circular room adorned with unique vine-like columns. Their fleeting hope quickly gives way to despair as they discover a shattered redstone portal, marking a definitive dead end. Matt, consumed by frustration, rages against their mysterious captors, the snakes and foxes. As Thorn begins to play a mournful melody, Moiraine stirs in his arms, and, unexpectedly, the music appears to exert a calming influence on the advancing Aelfin. Matt, observing this and recalling his past encounters and the boons granted by the Elfin, the memories to fill his perceived holes, the medallion for freedom from the power, and his seemingly direct return to Ruidian, suddenly experiences a profound moment of understanding. He realizes he had never explicitly asked for a weapon, but for a way out. His gaze falls upon his Ashandare, the weapon inscribed with the ancient treaty phrases including, "What was asked is given." The epiphany strikes him, the Ashandare is that very solution, the key to their escape. With this crucial revelation, Matt thrusts his Ashandare into the wall, causing a powerful burst of light to erupt. He carves a glowing triangular passage, a shimmering doorway to salvation. He bellows at Thorn to seize Moiraine and flee. As Thorn vanishes through the luminous opening, Matt defiantly turns to confront the now dazed, frenzied Elfin, fiercely fighting them off, tipping his hat with a defiant and sarcastic farewell to the foxes, and a final scathing curse to the unwashed lumps. Matt then leaps through the shimmering portal, disappearing in a blinding flash of white. Chapter 56. Something Wrong. Egwene, in her tent, received Gawain simply dressed. He reported Elaine's imminent visit but conveyed deep unease about Perrin Aybara. Aybara refused an audience, seemingly backing Althor, evident from his isolated camp, envoys, and a large army including White Cloaks led by Gawain's brother, Galad. Egwene considered Rand's motive for confiding in her, perhaps desiring resistance, while managing political challenges from the hall. Outside, Egwene saw the cloud-covered plain. Brine's army grew. New farmer groups, possibly Althor's, prompted her to order scouts. Elaine's Andoran army arrived, joining Aiel, Illianer's, and Caer Hyanin forces. Gawain suddenly froze, then ran, confused. Egwene followed, finding him kneeling before an older woman with red gold hair beside Elaine. Egwene realized Morgus Trakand was alive. Dark clouds parted, revealing a clear blue sky, signaling Rand's arrival, a calm before upheaval. Meanwhile, at the Black Tower, Andral and others discovered all attempts to weave gateways failed, unraveling as if blocked, though other channeling worked. Norley reported the returned Mezar was an imposter, with a wrong smile, now Time's loyalist. Escape was impossible due to failed gateways and Time's guards. Andral planned to gather Loghain loyalists and families into shared barracks for protection, under pretext. Seeking allies, Andral, facing Time's watchful supporters, again observed the fake Mezar's lifeless eyes. Desperate, he approached the Red Aja women, suspecting their motives but seeking allies against Time. He spoke with a plump, red sister, conveying his desire to leave and the deep wrongness in the tower, urging unity. She quickly admitted him before her hutmate returned, leaving Andral resolved. Chapter 57. A Rabbit for Supper. The narrative opens with Matt's jarring arrival on uneven ground, momentarily disoriented by a brilliant flash of light. He muttered an expletive, steadying himself with his Ashandare amidst the smells of foliage, soil, and decay. Once his vision cleared, he found himself outside the Tower of Genje, a return to his point of entry rather than Ruidian as he half expected. Tom supported a dazed Moiraine, who was blinking and surveying her surroundings. Matt, elated, defiantly shouted at the tower, proclaiming his triumphant survival against its crusty boot leavings and misbegotten liars. He slammed his spear down, reveling in his escape. Moiraine's soft query about the unidentified other prompted Tom to somberly confirm the individual's demise. This saddened Matt, who urged Tom to immortalize the fallen man as the true hero, realizing Tom had known Noel's identity all along. Matt then humorously suggested Tom knock him unconscious before any future negotiations. They moved away from the ominous tower, Moiraine explaining the Elfin and Elfin delighted in emotions, especially from a Tavaren, rather than merely feeding on them. In a wooded hollow, Matt observed Moiraine's changed appearance, less stone-like, more human, with visible expressions. When Tom struggled with the fire, Moiraine subtly used her reduced one power to ignite it, a grimace on her face that surprised Matt. She explained the fin had significantly diminished her channeling ability, drawing on her sorrow and the power itself. She recounted a tale of Lanfear's alleged rapid draining and a man who found her, stating she wasn't his target. Moiraine admitted to moments of wishing for death, comforting a helpless Tom by taking his hand and expressing her faith in his arrival. Addressing Mat, she noted his transformation and his lost eye, confirming she couldn't restore it, but requested her angreal. She revealed she had ironically asked for it from the Fin as one of her 3 demands, only for them to use it to enhance their draining. Mat questioned her demand, and Moiraine cryptically stated she knew only his arrival could free her, using her demands strategically. Mat considered them even for past mutual rescues. Moiraine observed Mat's lingering apprehension of the One Power, offering philosophical advice that challenging events often served a greater good. Mat reflected on her unwavering resolve, recalling her confrontation with Lanfear despite foreknowledge. When Tom asked their next move, Moiraine declared her priority, finding Rand. Mat, however, offered a blunt assessment. Rand was half mad, but had united forces for the last battle, and, remarkably, cleansed Saiden. Moiraine responded with profound relief, citing a prophecy's fulfillment. Tom jested that Mat's desire for a festival was an excuse to get drunk. Mat confirmed Elaine's queenship and Ravin's death, surprising Moiraine with his casual reference to past conversations. Tom then playfully disclosed Mat's accidental marriage to the Shonchan Empress, shocking Moiraine and prompting Mat's embarrassed, custom-blaming explanation. Moiraine attributed it to his Tavaren nature, which Mat inwardly accepted, surprised by his own budding affection for an Aes Sedai. Moiraine reiterated her intent to find Rand, but Mat, citing his Caemlyn obligations, insisted they go there, believing Elaine could best assist her. His internal struggle with distracting visions made him blush. Moiraine then, to Mat's utter astonishment, proposed marriage to Tom. Tom initially hesitated, citing his past issues with female channelers, but rejected Moiraine's offer to discard her angreal and remain weaker, accepting her strength. They pledged to marry, leaving Mat dumbfounded and humorously asking who would officiate, earning Moiraine's amused comment on his romantic nature. Tom accepted the warder bond, jokingly wondering about Elaine's court bard becoming a warder, and patched cloaks. Mat, incredulous, reminded Tom of his past dislike for Tar Valon and Caemlyn, to which Tom merely replied, "Times change." Moiraine advised Mat against spurning the warder bond, but he adamantly refused. Tom delivered a final pointed remark about Tuon's potential channeling ability, leaving Mat in worried silence. Moiraine and Tom then engaged in a private, affectionate discussion. Mat, feeling intrusive, departed to scout for their gateway. At the Arenelle, he built a cairn for Noel, reflecting on his survival, his throbbing eye, and the Finn's unclear influence. He worried about his fighting ability and Tuon's reaction. Idly flipping his knife, he casually tossed it, accidentally spearing a rabbit. He then found a nearly new cooking pot by the river. This stroke of luck, he realized, often came when least sought. Smiling, he retrieved the rabbit and the pot, ensuring Moiraine's tea. Epilogue. Greendal frantically gathered her belongings, an angreal contact lists, from her new palace, seething over Perrin Aibara's escape that ruined her plans to manipulate the Shonchan Empress. Shaidar Haran, a towering, eyeless Myrddraal, confronted her. He condemned her failures, implicating her dreams spike in Mesana's fall. Greendal's attempts to blame others were silenced, as Shaidar Haran declared her chance gone, given to another, and promised she would not forget what comes next, seizing her as she screamed. In the wolf dream, which appeared blighted, Perrin struggled to exert his will, briefly restoring summer and a misty Hopper whose lifeless eyes revealed the dream's corruption. Grounding himself with thoughts of Fail, he recalled Hopper's final command, "Seek Boundless, he will explain." Perrin found Boundless, a wolf, who resisted, showing images of Perrin and a cage. Perrin realized boundless was Noam, the man lost to his wolf side. Perrin tried to make Noam recall his human past. Noam vehemently denied it, briefly shifting to human form before snarling as a wolf. Perrin understood Noam chose the wolf for peace, a unique balance distinct from his own. He projected an image of himself and young bull united, expressing gratitude. Olva played snakes and foxes, secretly vowing revenge for his parents, expecting Mat's help. He won the supposedly unwinnable game, startling Talmanes. Olva then found a sealed letter from Verin, intended for Mat. Talmanes, recognizing it, grew frantic, explaining Mat avoided it to prevent political entanglement. Olva insisted, prompting Talmanes to read it, cursing loudly before rushing to raise an alarm. Olva read the letter. Verin, dead, entrusted Mat with a mission. Shadow Spawn were invading Kemlin via a waygate. Elaine must destroy or guard it. Seeing a reddish glow over Kemlin, Olva confirmed Talmanes' cries of "Trollocs in Kemlin." Olva, remembering his vow, retrieved a hidden knife, ready to fight. Bariga, a wounded merchant, fled Trollocs through the Blight, his caravan destroyed, Kandor fallen. He hoped for Arafel. Collapsing, he saw 3 veiled figures. His initial relief, mistaking them for Isle, turned to horror when one unveiled a face with sharpened teeth and malevolent glee, revealing them as a terrible, corrupted force. Rand, in his self-controlled dream, found peace on a mountain, planning demands for rulers before facing the Dark One. Distant screams shattered his calm. He entered a dark, skull-like chamber, finding a screaming woman with silvery hair. He recognized her soul, Mirin Eronael Lanfear. She described endless torture by an unseen shadow. She screamed about its approach and was violently pulled through a breaking wall into darkness, leaving Rand with hatred, concern, and unsettling desire. Lan stood at Tarwin's Gap, facing an immense Trolloc army with his smaller force. With Andere and Kaisel, he felt Nynaeve's strong, comforting bond. He loudly proclaimed his identity, Al-Lan Mandragoran, renouncing An-Alain as he was no longer alone, defying the shadow. Raising his sword, he roared, charging with 12,000 mounted warriors, Malkieri, Kandori, Arafelin, Shienerans, and Saldeans, against 150,000, ready to meet their last charge of the Golden Crane with honor. The chapter concludes with the prophecies of the Shadow, foretelling the Dark One's prison weakening, his re-emergence, and the fall of nations. It speaks of the one-eyed fool, Mat, the first among vermin, implied Fane, aiding destruction, the end of the fallen blacksmith's pride, Perrin's identity, and the broken wolf, Perrin, consumed by midnight towers, bringing sorrow. It culminates in the Lord of the Evening, confronting the broken champion, whose blood will usher in a beautiful darkness